Magus, hand over the artifact, and we might spare your life. You can't escape. This entire area is sealed. Ha ha! Who would have thought? The great Magus Stockholm, reduced to such a pathetic state. The so-called greatest genius of the universe. What a joke. Look at you now. Stockholm stood in shattered black armor, his body a mess of wounds, one arm missing. Blood poured from him, pooling at his feet. Hundreds of corpses surrounded him, staining the once green plains a deep crimson. Facing him were thousands of Magi, forming a tight ring with no gap to flee through. His fate was already decided. The strongest among them had completely encircled him. Some mocked, some cursed, but none dared to step forward. Behind their bravado, there was only fear. They knew a cornered beast was most dangerous, and nobody wanted to be the one to face Stockholm's final strike. Then Stockholm slowly raised his remaining arm. Every Magus instantly tensed, mana flaring as they prepared to defend. A heartbeat later, a white lotus appeared in his palm, glowing softly, and their eyes all burned with greed. Stockholm gazed at the lotus and let out a bitter smile. This burden is too heavy for me. Maybe this was never meant to be my destiny. Resolve flashed in his eyes as he lifted his head to stare at the thousands surrounding him. All my life, I chased the peak of magic. Even if I die here today, I have no regrets. One day, someone will inherit my will and continue my dream. His lips curled into a cold smile. But since you've all come this far, you can accompany me to the afterlife. A chill ran through the crowd. A suffocating sense of dread rose in every heart. Before anyone could react, an overwhelming, alien pressure crashed down on them, forcing their bodies to tremble. It was coming from the White Lotus. Space within thousands of miles froze as the lotus slowly bloomed. Stockholm's face hardened as he poured every last drop of his power into the artifact. A violent energy vortex formed with the lotus at its center. Hairline cracks began spreading through the air itself. The lotus's divine might was collapsing the void. The thousands of Magi tried to flee, but it was useless. One after another, their gazes went empty as their souls were torn apart and swallowed by the lotus. Stockholm clenched his teeth as his consciousness dimmed. One by one, the top Magi fell, their bodies intact, but their souls completely gone. In the end, even Stockholm could no longer endure. His soul shattered and was devoured by the White Lotus. The greatest genius of the Magus universe had fallen. The Magi who died alongside him were all beings who could rule planets, whose names shook countless lives across the cosmos. Yet before the White Lotus, they were no more than ants. What was most terrifying was that their bodies suffered no wounds at all. The artifact had ignored flesh entirely and directly destroyed and consumed their souls. After finishing its feast, the White Lotus floated alone in the sky. A moment later, it slipped into one of the cracks in the void and disappeared. The legendary artifact drifted quietly through the endless universe, waiting for the next fated soul to claim it. Amidst the chirping of crickets and the hooting of owls, a young boy with a slightly tanned and muscular body was practicing his swordplay at a small clearing in the middle of the woods. His upper body was bare and drenched in sweat. Every time the boy lifted the rusty sword and hacked it down, drops of sweat would fall on the grass. Although his sword technique was lousy, one could still feel the determination with each swing. A few minutes later, he stopped practicing and lay down on the ground, completely exhausted. His chest heaved up and down as he stared at the two moons in the night sky. It's been over a month since we've departed from the Cormier Kingdom, the boy thought. In the past month, the traveling party had crossed 2 kingdoms already. They were attacked by ferocious beasts a handful of times, but their attacks had been thwarted by the mercenaries that were guarding the carriages. Fortunately, they hadn't been attacked by any magical beasts or the mindless ogres and trolls that resided in the wilderness. The boy turned his head and glanced at the dozen carriages surrounding a large bonfire at the edge of the woods. I overheard the other kids say that the journey to Moon City would take another 2 months. The famous Moon City was the capital of the Nightingale Kingdom, and the destination of the traveling party was the renowned Magic Academy in Moon City, the Clover Academy. Every year, children from the neighboring kingdoms would travel to Moon City in hopes of enrolling in the prestigious Clover Academy and embarking on the path to becoming a Magus. The boy was no different. His name was Adam Constantine, a commoner from the Cormier Kingdom. As a child, he happened to come across a wandering Magus and learned that he had a talent for spellcasting. Adam couldn't help but be ecstatic at this discovery. After all, in the world he lived in, Magi were mighty beings that were revered by the masses. They were strong and wise, able to control the elements of nature as they wished and create countless miracles. Moreover, this was a world where the strong preyed on the weak. If one didn't have sufficient strength, they would never amount to anything. Naturally, Adam didn't want to live the rest of his life in mediocrity. Ever since then, he'd been meticulously training every day, resolved to become a Magus and experience the myriad wonders of the world. Unlike the other nobles in the traveling party, however, Adam was an orphan and could only rely on himself. He did whatever odd jobs he could find to save enough money for the enrollment fees. However, he doubted the meager amount of money he had saved would be enough. Thinking of his money problems, Adam couldn't help but helplessly sigh. After we reach Moon City, there should still be some time left till the Academy's entrance examination. I'll think of a way to earn some money then. But no matter what, I must enter the Academy and become a Magus. He got his feet and did some light stretching. After picking up his sword and other belongings, he walked to a nearby pond to wash himself. The silver light of the twin moons shone on the surface of the pond. Accompanied by the pleasant sound of the birds chirping from time to time, it created a peaceful atmosphere. Adam couldn't help but instinctively relax. However, he still looked around for any potential dangers before removing his pants and slowly walking into the pond. His body involuntarily shivered upon coming in contact with the cold water. However, he slowly got used to the temperature and then started washing his body. Adam peacefully lay in the pond, relaxing his sore muscles. The surface of the pond reflected his young visage. He had jet-black eyes that shone with childlike innocence, as well as tenacity that was rarely found in children of his age. His black hair was parted from the middle and reached the bottom of his neck. Adam's facial features were average. He was neither handsome nor bad-looking. No, to be honest, his appearance was actually below average. Suddenly, his stomach rumbled, and he couldn't help but stroke his belly underwater. It's almost time for dinner. I should head back. Adam was famished after that intense round of sword practice. He was about to get out of the pond and dry himself when all of a sudden he caught sight of something peculiar from the corner of his eyes. He squinted his eyes and looked in the distance. What's that? In the center of the pond, a pristine white lotus was floating on the surface, and around it were 3 verdant round leaves. The lotus looked ordinary, but at the same time, it emanated a subtle divine aura that made others want to prostrate before it in veneration. Adam was dazed as he looked at the white lotus, his mind gradually feeling refreshed for some strange reason. A few minutes later, he snapped out of his daze and looked at this strange flower in surprise. What the hell is this flower? He muttered in amazement. His mind had never felt so invigorated before. Suddenly, he recalled something and thought, could this lotus be one of those precious natural ingredients used to make magical potions? Excitement took hold of him as he thought of this possibility, and before he knew it, he was already swimming toward the center of the pond. If I can sell this ingredient in Moon City, I should be able to earn enough money for the Academy's enrollment fee. Adam swam without trying to make too much sound. He was afraid someone would be attracted by the commotion he made and discover the white lotus as well. Soon, he swam to the center of the pond, the lotus now within his reach. With a wide grin on his face, he reached out with his hands and tried to gently grab the lotus. But his expression suddenly froze. The moment his fingers touched the white petals, the lotus vanished. And the next moment, his eyes rolled back and he lost consciousness.
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support, we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
Adam's vision was initially blurry, but when it focused, he found himself standing on a vast green plain. What is this place? He flustered. To say he was shocked beyond belief would be a severe understatement. One moment he was bathing in the pond, the next he was transported to this foreign place. The following moment, the scene around him changed, and a handsome young man with long black hair and wearing black armor appeared in front of him. Adam's eyes turned wide as he retreated a few steps. Who the hell are you? However, the black-armored man couldn't seem to hear him at all, or see him for that matter. Before Adam could inquire further, thousands of people appeared in his vicinity out of nowhere. Some were levitating in the air, while others were standing on the ground, completely surrounding the black-armored man. Just their auras alone left Adam feeling breathless. Only one word echoed inside his mind: Magus. When he looked at the black-armored man, he found that the man was incomparably calm. His back was straight, and there was not even a hint of fear in his eyes. Adam gulped involuntarily and thought in amazement, just who is this person? Next, the people in the scene began talking in a foreign language, and Adam couldn't make heads or tails of it. But from the expressions of the thousands of Magi that had surrounded the man, he understood that they hadn't come with good intentions. What unfolded next completely changed Adam's worldview. The thousands of Magi gathered here attacked the armored man all at once. Bright colors bloomed as spells of devastating magnitude were cast one after another. The ground cracked and the sky split apart. Adam's mouth was agape as he observed the great battle unfold. Just what sort of concept is this? He screamed in his heart. His surroundings were destroyed, but nothing happened to him. He was simply a spectator. He understood that the people in this scene were all-powerful Magi. But what Adam couldn't understand was that even though thousands of people were attacking the armored man, the latter fought fearlessly and instead had the upper hand. With a wave of his hand, the armored man froze the surrounding space. With another wave of his hand, countless people were disintegrated into nothingness. The Magi that were attacking the armored man were also nothing to be scoffed at. With a single spell, they could summon meteor showers, create earthquakes, bring forth thunder, and so on. Slowly, the scales began to tip in their favor, and the armored man was finally dealt a crucial blow. A female Magus approached him at the speed of light and cut off his arm. But the price she paid was her life. No! Adam involuntarily screamed as he saw the armored man getting grievously injured. Unknowingly, he had begun to root for this brave Magus. From that point onward, the black-armored Magus continued to get injured. No matter how powerful he was or how heaven-defying his spells were, in the end, he couldn't compete against thousands of Magi who seemed to be on the same power level as him. On his last breath, the armored Magus did something that completely and utterly shocked Adam down to his core. He stretched his arm, and a white lotus appeared on his palm. Adam sucked in a breath of cold air as his heartbeat sped up. I assent that. The next moment, the space seemed to have frozen as the thousands of Magi struggled to escape. The white lotus bloomed, creating a terrifying energy vortex. One by one, the Magi perished, and before long, the black-armored man's arm limply fell to his side. Adam's heart was churning with turbulent waves as he witnessed this scene. He looked into the eyes of the armored Magus, and strangely enough, he felt as if the Magus was also looking straight at him. Adam saw the life slowly seeping out of the Magus, yet there was no fear or regret in the latter's eyes. The Magus died standing on his feet, his back straight as a spear. However, before dying, the Magus' gaze seemed to have transcended time and space and met Adam's. The youth didn't know if his mind was playing tricks on him or not, but he felt as if the armored Magus faintly nodded at him. Adam's eyes moistened as he witnessed the last moments of the Magus who fought valiantly to his death. The next moment, the scene changed once again, and Adam found himself floating in a mysterious white space. Disoriented, he looked around in a daze and saw motes of bright light floating around lazily. Some were small, while others were big. It took him a long time to come to his senses, but he still found it difficult to digest the grand and spectacular scene of a lone Magus fending off against thousands of people. That man was wielding the same lotus I found in the pond. He mumbled in disbelief. Adam's eyes then fell on the mote of light hovering near him. He gulped nervously and reached out his hand in anticipation. However, before he could, the scene changed once again, and he found himself floating on the pond he had earlier been bathing in. He looked around and found that the white lotus was nowhere to be seen. No, where is it? Adam panicked. By now, it would be stupid of him to not realize that the white lotus was in fact some kind of powerful magic artifact that could potentially alter his life. The youth looked around frantically, but the lotus was nowhere in sight. Suddenly, he caught sight of his hazy reflection on the pond's surface and froze. At the center of his forehead, a little above his eyebrows, was a lotus insignia. Adam's eyes lit up in excitement as he thought of a possibility. Could it be that the white lotus fused with me? Thinking of this, he was incomparably excited. He didn't know what the lotus was, but what he did know was that it was an extremely powerful tool that could help him on his path to becoming a Magus. Slowly, under his observation, the lotus insignia completely melded with his skin and disappeared. After gathering his thoughts, Adam swam to the edge of the pond. He dried himself and wore a fresh pair of clothes, a blue tunic and white pants. He absent-mindedly walked toward the bonfire where the dinner was being distributed when all of a sudden a mocking voice full of disdain drifted into his ears. "Oh, if it isn't the peasant warrior." Adam's eyes narrowed as he involuntarily clenched his fists. He looked toward the source of this voice with annoyance. This bastard again. A young blond boy who seemed to be about the same age as Adam slowly walked towards the clearing in the woods. He was wearing lavish silk clothes and fancy ornaments, and had an arrogant smile on his face. Indeed, it is the peasant warrior. Ha, look at his damn rusty sword. I'm afraid it'll break if the wind blows. The two boys walking behind the blond youth also chimed in as they mocked Adam. Ever since the beginning of the journey, the three of them had constantly picked on Adam. After all, he was the only commoner in the traveling party. They despised the fact that a mere commoner would try to become a Magus. One had to know that it was almost always children of noble birth who had the chance to become a Magus. Adam was very fortunate to have received the grace of wandering Magus a few years back. The Magus had later confirmed that Adam had an aptitude for spellcasting. Thus, it was extremely rare for a commoner to even dare to embark on the path of a Magus. Not only was talent a crucial factor, but more importantly, one needed large amounts of resources. Adam looked at the blond youth walking toward him and gritted his teeth. This boy, Jeffrey Palmer, was the son of a duke from the Cormier kingdom. Being a noble of high birth, he naturally looked down on everyone else, most of all commoners like him. Until now, Adam would always silently endure all the insults thrown at him by this group, because he didn't want any unnecessary trouble. However, after watching the black-armored Magus fighting off thousands of Magi single-handedly, Adam felt a little hot-blooded. For once, he decided to stand up for himself. Besides, they were far away from Cormier kingdom. Adam was sure that Jeffrey's influence wouldn't reach so far away from the kingdom. So he looked at Jeffrey dead in the eye and asked, "What do you want?" Jeffrey was taken aback. "Oh, so you do know how to talk. Oh, what's with that look? You dare talk back to Jeffrey?" The two lackeys stared daggers at Adam. Clearly, they wanted to be on Jeffrey's good books. Adam simply ignored them and stared intently at Jeffrey. "If there's nothing, then get lost. Don't bother me from now on. I'm warning you." Jeffrey was stunned, thinking just what had gotten into this peasant to have suddenly grown a pair of balls. But soon he was furious, and he growled, "You lowlife, how dare you talk to me like that? Jeffrey, leave this bastard to us. We'll teach him his place." The two lackeys walked toward Adam with unkind intentions. One of them suddenly rushed toward Adam and swung his fist. Adam calmly sidestepped, easily dodging the punch. He then raised his fist and struck the boy's face. His movements completely caught the boy off guard. The boy never imagined, even in his wildest dreams, that Adam would have the balls to retaliate. The fist landed squarely on the boy's nose, and he fell to the ground, screaming in pain. "Arg, my nose, it's broken." He looked at Adam with hateful eyes. "You motherf." Bam! Adam stomped on the boy's face and knocked him out. The other boy who was approaching him suddenly froze in his footsteps, shock etched all over his face. Even Jeffrey was dumbstruck. "Come, what are you waiting for?" Adam looked at the other boy with a smug smile. He felt really good beating the bully. The boy nearly peed his pants as he struggled to even answer. In the end, he simply turned around and ran back to the campsite with his tail tucked between his legs. "You coward, come back here!" Jeffrey roared, but the boy fled even faster. "Son of a bitch." Jeffrey couldn't help but curse. He turned around and saw Adam crouching down and picking up a pouch from the unconscious boy lying on the ground. "You thief! Stop what you're doing." Adam grabbed the pouch and looked inside. Upon seeing so many gold coins inside, he whistled in surprise. This was more money than he had managed to save back in his hometown in Cormier Kingdom. He then looked at Jeffrey and demanded, "Hand over your money pouch." "You!" Jeffrey was dumbfounded. This peasant dared to extort him, a noble son of a duke? The sheer audacity. Overcome by anger, Jeffrey ran toward Adam while screaming, "You bastard, I'll fight you. How dare you?" Bam! Adam easily knocked him out with a punch to the face. He crouched down and grabbed the money pouch from Jeffrey. This pouch was made of fine silk and was twice as heavy as the first one. Feeling the weight, Adam smiled in satisfaction. "Consider this the fine for bullying me." He got to his feet and walked toward the campfire, laughing heartily. The monetary problems that he had been worrying about for so long had been alleviated so easily. Naturally, he was in a happy mood. Of course, he wasn't afraid of any retaliation from Jeffrey. After all, the Cormier Kingdom was far from where they currently were. Moreover, the mercenaries guarding the traveling party wouldn't intervene in a scuffle between kids. Adam walked to the place where one of the mercenaries was distributing food. He got in line and patiently waited. A few minutes later, he grabbed his dinner, bread and meat stew, and sat on a patch of grass a little further away from the camp. While eating dinner, he thought back to the scene of the grand battle he had seen earlier, as well as that mysterious white place he had visited. He couldn't help but involuntarily rub his forehead where the lotus insignia had hidden itself. Just what was that place? Adam thought to himself as he recalled the countless motes of bright light in that mysterious space. He wondered how he could access that place again. He absent-mindedly finished his dinner and then laid down on the grass, gazing at the myriad stars in the sky. He recalled the scene of the black-armored Magus fighting and had a look of yearning in his eyes. "I wonder if I'll ever be able to be like that Magus." The scene of the battle kept repeating in his head, and slowly, Adam fell into a deep slumber. In one of the carriages by the campfire, a man wearing an olive-colored cloak was sitting by the window and reading an ancient-looking book. Suddenly, he raised his head and his bright blue eyes stared at the sleeping Adam. The man's gaze then fell on the few bulging money pouches on the youth. A moment later, his gaze swept through the clearing inside the woods and fell on the two unconscious boys. The man's eyes narrowed, but in the end, he simply sighed and shook his head ever so slightly. Another month passed by as the traveling party continued on their journey to Moon City. It was the rainy season, and the party had to withstand the heavy rainfall on their way. The path was tough to traverse, but thanks to the sturdy scale horses, they didn't face many problems. Other than that, the traveling party was attacked by magic beasts a handful of times. But these beasts were defeated by the mercenaries traveling with them. Although these mercenaries couldn't wield mana, that didn't mean they couldn't fight. More than 30 strong mercenaries were traveling with the party, and they easily took care of any magic beasts that attacked. However, everyone knew that the closer they got to the Nightingale Kingdom, the number of magic beasts would increase. At that point, these mortal mercenaries would become useless. But thankfully, 3 rank 1 Magi were also traveling with the group. They were assigned by the Clover Academy to safely bring the children to Moon City. Till now, the Magi had yet to make a move. But when they did, all the children believed that it would be a sight to behold. In the past month, Adam continued to diligently work out, as well as hone his fighting skills every day. Jeffrey had gathered a few other kids and come to look for trouble with Adam a couple of times. But every time the group confronted Adam, they would be severely beaten, and at the end of it, Adam would come out a richer man. After a certain point, the kids simply stopped bothering him. Due to the disparity in their classes, none of the kids in the party tried to befriend Adam. Although he felt a little hurt by this, he grew to live with it. To him, all that mattered was strengthening himself and focusing on becoming a Magus. Although none of the kids spoke to him, the same couldn't be said about the mercenaries. After all, Adam was a prospective Magus. Who wouldn't want to form a healthy relationship with a future Magus? On this day, Adam was sitting by a smaller bonfire and having dinner with a few of these mercenaries. He loudly chewed the food in his mouth and asked a man sitting beside him on the wooden log, "Rick, you said you're from Moon City, no? How is that place?" Rick was a middle-aged mercenary with a receding hairline. He had a scar over his left eye, which Adam thought was very cool. He tore a piece of meat from a bone and replied with a laugh, "In my life, I've been fortunate enough to travel to most of the kingdoms in the Southern Federation. But I can confidently say that Moon City is the best among all the places I've visited." Adam inquired with bright eyes, "Tell me what it's really like." Rick chugged a copper cup filled with wheat ale and replied, Where should I start?" The man thought for a good few moments and then continued, "There is the river Orii that flows through the city, dividing it into two sections, the North Ward and the South Ward. The North Ward is where most of the nobles live, and it is also where the royal palace is located. As for the South Ward, that's where the Clover Academy campus is." What else is there?" Rick pondered hard. A female mercenary, Lila, sitting beside Rick, rolled her eyes. "You idiot. How can you forget the Lunar Bridge?" "That's right." Rick laughed embarrassedly as he slapped his thigh. "There's Lunar Bridge, the most famous landmark in the city." "What's so special about this bridge?" Adam asked curiously. This time it was Lila who answered. "The Lunar Bridge crosses the river Orii and connects the North Ward to the South Ward. The bridge is a product of magic and is rumored to be built by dwarves. Every time the twin moons, Selene and Luna, appear in the night sky, the Lunar Bridge comes alive and shines brightly, reflecting the splendor of the moons." "Whoa," Adam asked in amazement. "A product of magic?" The few mercenaries sitting by the bonfire nodded and began talking about the various things to do in Moon City. The more Adam heard, the more he wished that he arrived at this magnificent city sooner. Then the topic switched to Magi. One of the mercenaries spoke with a slur. Clearly, he was a bit tipsy. "Magi are very common in Moon City and are respected by all. I've even heard rumors about a secret neighborhood there that can only be accessed by Magi." "Really?" Adam asked excitedly. All the mercenaries nodded. "I can't wait to enter Clover Academy and start studying to become a Magus." Adam clenched his fists and spoke with determination. Lila looked at him and chuckled. "When you become a Magus, don't forget to hire us for any work you have." Adam suddenly realized why the mercenaries were being so amiable with him. But he didn't mind it. They meant him no ill will, after all. He nodded. "Of course." Hearing his affirmation, the few mercenaries by the small campfire were gratified. They continued to talk for a long time and even made Adam try ale for the first time. They also quite liked Adam. He was neither arrogant nor overbearing, unlike the other kids in the traveling party. They got along quite well with each other. On the other side, a few kids, including Jeffrey, were hatefully looking at Adam, drinking alcohol, and having fun with the mercenaries. A brown-haired boy with freckles gnashed his teeth and asked, "Jeffrey, are we going to do nothing about Adam? That scumbag took my sword. It was a family heirloom, damn it." Jeffrey coldly looked at this youth and snorted. "Then why don't you go to him and ask for your sword back?" The freckled boy couldn't come up with a reply. A few days ago, he was kicked in the butt so hard by Adam that it still hurt. Seeing the boy not reply, Jeffrey scoffed. "Didn't think so." He then turned his attention back to Adam, who seemed to be already drunk, and thought to himself, "The intensity of magic beasts will increase when we near the borders of Nightingale Kingdom." A cold glint flashed past his eyes. "I'll take care of you amidst the chaos from the magic beasts. You lowly peasant dare take my money and humiliate me? I'll make sure you die." The brilliant rays of the midday sun shone upon Crest Valley and bathed it in vitality. This valley and the mountains surrounding it were home to all sorts of magic beasts. People who passed through this valley would usually take the safest route that had already been scouted beforehand by the Magi. And if one were to travel through this valley alone, that was simply courting death. Of course, if it were a very powerful Magus, then there would be nothing to worry about. The traveling party had just entered Crest Valley. From here on out, they would take about 3 weeks, give or take, to reach Moon City. But more importantly, the attacks from magic beasts would also intensify from here on out. Magic beasts had extreme primal tendencies. They disliked foreigners encroaching upon their territory. Adam looked at the view through the carriage window in awe. After all, he'd spent all his life in a small town in Cormier Kingdom. In the last 2 months, he had witnessed many new and different things. In the distance, a pack of half a dozen foxes were staring at the traveling party vigilantly, whereas the fox cubs were playing with each other in a carefree manner. On the other side, a herd of horses with fiery mane ran unrestrainedly. Although the scene looked spectacular, Adam knew that it was all just a facade. After his regular chats with the mercenaries, he had come to learn just how dangerous this valley was. Moreover, Crest Valley bordered the murky mountains, a place that even Magi didn't dare venture into. Adam's hands involuntarily grabbed the hilt of his sword as he thought to himself. Rick and the others mentioned that there would always be deaths in the traveling party when they went through the Crest Valley. He had learned that this wasn't the first time Rick and the other mercenaries were escorting young children to Moon City. In their past travels, there would always be casualties in this dangerous place. Even if there were Magi present, they couldn't save everyone. "Excuse me." Suddenly, a meek voice called out to Adam. He turned around to see that a young girl with twin ponytails was looking at him nervously. "Yes?" Adam asked. The girl thought for a moment and then replied, "You've been talking to these mercenaries quite often. How long did they say it'll take us to reach Moon City? I can't stand it anymore." Adam looked into the girl's eyes and noticed great discomfort as well as a hint of apprehension. He couldn't help but sigh. These nobles have never had to withstand such inconvenience in their lives. I could see why they would find this journey unpleasant, he thought. Just because Adam enjoyed the entire journey till now didn't necessarily mean that the others did too. In fact, most of the children were sick of traveling for months. Not to mention, they even had to be cramped up inside wooden carriages for long periods. Add to that, the constant attacks from wild beasts on their journey were taking a mental toll on them. Adam replied what he knew. The mercenaries said we'd reach the borders of the Nightingale Kingdom in another 2 weeks. From there on, it'll be completely safe. Moon City would take us another week of traveling once we enter the borders. "Oh, I see, thanks," the girl replied and then turned quiet. The other children in the carriage heard Adam, and most of them were relieved. They'd already spent more than 2 months traveling. A few more weeks shouldn't be that hard. Or so they thought. Just before sunset, the traveling party found a relatively high ground to camp for the night. The mercenaries all got to work as they set up tents and started a campfire. This was part of their duties, after all. In one of the wooden carriages, the blue-eyed, olive-cloaked man who was still reading a book suddenly raised his head and looked into the distance. His gaze seemed to have traveled a long distance and made a discovery. His lips parted and he spoke calmly. "I guess it's time to make our move." 2 other people in this carriage, a man and a woman wearing the same olive-colored cloak, looked in the direction the blue-eyed man was looking in. The man replied, "Let those mercenaries handle it. We'll move in when things get a little difficult for them. Besides, those entitled little kids need some tempering. Clover Academy is not a place for weak-willed Magi." "If you say so." The blue-eyed man shrugged and got back to reading. A few minutes of peace ensued, when suddenly, howl! The howling of a wolf disturbed the peace in the camp. This wild and desolate howl echoed in the valley for a few moments and then more howling could be heard one after another. Damn it, it's a wolf pack, and a large one at that. The mercenaries wore solemn expressions. A single wolf alone, even if it was a magic beast, was not much to deal with. However, if it was a large wolf pack, then that spelled nothing but trouble. The wolves within a pack were able to coordinate with one another almost like a small military troop and were very difficult to fight against. Hurry up, arrange the carriages as the blockade and get into formation. The leader of the mercenaries, an intimidating-looking bald man wearing leather armor, screamed as he ordered the others. In the dark of the night, hundreds of pairs of ominous green eyes were suddenly visible in the distance, and they were approaching the camp at a terrifying speed. The ground also began to rumble, signaling the incoming wolf pack. Shit, it's the night wolves. Damn it, get in formation. Get in formation. The mercenaries began cursing one after another. Night wolves were the strongest during nighttime. Their movements were swift and their attacks vicious. Rick looked at the dozens of children who were in a state of panic and spoke solemnly. Prepare for battle. The few little boys and girls in the group began crying and calling out for their parents, while some of them had serious looks on their faces and brandished their weapons. Adam, too, felt the severity of the situation and unsheathed his steel sword that he had recently extorted out of one of the kids. His grip around the sword hilt tightened as he anxiously looked at the incoming wolf pack. A few meters away, Jeffrey, who had a crossbow in his hand, looked at the incoming wolves and gulped nervously. But when he turned his head and glanced at Adam, a cruel light shone in his eyes. The hungry wolves opened their maws and bared their sharp teeth as they ran toward the traveling party. When they were only 30 meters away, the bald mercenary leader roared, "Shoot!" Dozens of arrows were fired by the mercenaries toward the incoming wolf pack. The wolves at the front instantly stumbled after being injured by the arrows. Soon, they were dead after being trampled upon by their brethren from behind. When the wolves were 15 meters away, another volley of arrows was fired and a dozen more wolves died. "Fight with me!" The mercenary leader shouted heroically as he brandished his spear. The mercenaries behind him readied their weapons and patiently waited for the wolves to arrive. And the next moment, the wolves smashed against the wooden carriages. The mercenaries who were standing between carriages or on top of it began attacking. A brutal bloodbath transpired. Wolf howls rang from time to time as they fell to their deaths. Some of the wolves split up and surrounded the camp, but they were stopped by the mercenaries who were guarding behind the carriages. The sound of curses, yelling, and wolf howls mixed together with the scene of blood sent chills down the children's backs who were situated at the center of the camp. Adam himself couldn't stop his hands from trembling. He had never witnessed such a gory scene before. Even in his hometown, he had never come across something so brutal. The most he had ever done was kill a wild boar just outside his hometown. But this wolf pack completely overwhelmed him. He closed his eyes, took deep breaths, and tried to calm his turbulent emotions. A few moments later, he opened his eyes, and they shone with determination. "I'll kill anything that slips past the blockade," he screamed in his heart. He wasn't hot-blooded or muddle-headed enough to directly join the mercenaries. No, he would simply wait at the safe spot and attack if any wolves came at him. And it didn't take long for the mercenaries' formation to be broken. Just a few minutes into the battle, a young mercenary had already been eaten alive by the wolves. A grievously injured wolf managed to break through the blockade and rushed toward the children at the center. Witnessing this scene, most of the children froze in horror, especially the children around Adam, because the wolf was heading in their direction. At the crucial moment, Adam instinctively rushed toward the wolf instead of retreating. His heart pounded vigorously as he inched closer to the vicious beast. In the blink of an eye, he raised his sword and struck with a horizontal slash as he ran past the wolf. The wolf abruptly came to a stop, and the next moment, blood gushed out from the side of its body. Adam's sword had slashed the wolf from the neck all the way to its waist. Following that, the wolf limply fell down. It struggled for a few seconds and then finally died. "I did it," Adam muttered in disbelief as he breathed in large mouthfuls of air. With the adrenaline pumping through his veins, he felt like he was on top of the world. He felt invincible. For a brief moment, he had this impulse to join the mercenaries and fight with them. But soon, he shook his head and rid himself of such conceited thoughts. He hurriedly retreated toward the center of the camp and got into a fighting position once again. Only now did the children around him react to what had just happened. Heavens, did you see that? He actually killed it. The children screamed in utter disbelief. Some looked at him with admiration, while most only felt negatively. They ridiculed themselves for being outdone by a mere commoner. However, with Adam killing the wolf, the children's morale was lifted and most of them readied themselves for any impending wolf attacks. These children had the talent to become Magi and were prideful by nature. How could they let others outshine them? Jeffrey, who had witnessed everything, was still frozen in shock. He couldn't help but wonder if he were in Adam's shoes, would he make it out alive in that situation? Would he be able to so easily conquer his fear and run towards the wolf? The answer was clear to him. For a moment, he hesitated whether to make a move against Adam or not. However, the ingrained arrogance and pride in him overcame his reasoning. His expression turned unsightly. This bastard deserves death for what he did to me. Not only did he steal my money, he even thrashed me in front of others. Even my own father never raised his hand on me. To think that this peasant had the nerve. Unforgivable. Jeffrey decided in his heart that he would kill Adam during this beast attack. Even if he couldn't manage to kill Adam, he at least had to brutally injure him so that he could never become a Magus in his life. More and more mercenaries at the blockade were attacked and killed by the ravenous wolves. Due to this, many wolves had slipped past the makeshift blockade made of carriages and attacked the children. There were even 2 deaths among the children. However, the Magi still hadn't made their move. The children as well as the mercenaries were getting extremely anxious. Adam kept hacking his sword at any wolf that came his way. Vertical slash, horizontal slash, thrust, stab, he attacked with everything he had in his arsenal. He was drenched in blood from head to toe. Some was his own blood, while most of it was from the wolves. He had completely lost himself in the moment as he continued to hack away with his sword like a madman. Jeffrey, who was using his crossbow and assisting the children from a relatively safer spot, suddenly glanced in Adam's direction and his eyes lit up. Chance! He knocked a bolt in the crossbow and aimed it toward Adam. At the same time, he didn't forget to shout out righteously, "Adam, let me help you." Phew! Jeffrey finally fired the bolt, and his lips curled up into a wicked grin. At the moment, Adam was busy defending against the attack of a wolf. He had been fighting nonstop for the last 10 minutes or so and was already out of strength. So he was relieved that someone was coming to help him. However, when he heard the voice, he was confused. Isn't that Jeffrey's voice? Why is he? He had never expected Jeffrey, out of all people, to help him. This left him puzzled. But the next moment, his thoughts came to an abrupt halt when an arrow pierced his left shoulder. Adam's eyes widened in shock. He didn't have a second of respite as the moment he was shot. The wolf had gotten the upper hand and had severely bitten his left arm and pinned him to the ground. Agate! Adam screamed in agony as the wolf's teeth sunk deeper into his arm, threatening to rip it apart. He was unable to do anything about it. Meanwhile, Jeffrey reloaded another bolt into the crossbow and cursed inwardly. Damn it! I was aiming for the head. He looked at Adam, struggling underneath the wolf, and hesitated to shoot another bolt. However, he ultimately decided against it. That earlier shot could still be attributed to an honest mistake, but if he shot Adam again, he didn't know how the 3 Magi would react to his blatant attempt at murder. Jeffrey didn't want to risk it. He took one last glance at Adam and coldly smiled. "Serves you right, you peasant." He then turned around and started shooting down wolves. Adam struggled with all his might as he tried to escape from the deathly maw of the gluttonous wolf. But no matter how hard he tried, he just couldn't overpower the beast. His left arm was slowly beginning to go numb. He gritted his teeth and his eyes reddened. Involuntarily, tears streamed down his face and mixed with the blood. He thought back to all his struggles during his childhood, his encounter with the white lotus in the pond, and finally the scene of the black-armored Magus fighting valiantly against the thousands of Magi. Adam's eyes turned even more bloodshot and his aura turned savage. He screamed in his heart, That brave Magus single-handedly fought against thousands of powerful Magi, and I can't even fight a mere beast. How can I die here? I haven't even become a Magus. I refuse to die. A raging fire lit up inside of him, and he managed to gather strength that he didn't even know he had. He glanced at the crossbow bolt sticking out from his left shoulder and yanked it out. Ergerd! He growled like a beast as he tightly grabbed the bolt and stabbed it into the wolf's eye. Immediately, the wolf let go of Adam's arm and whimpered in misery. It tried to run away, but Adam had already coiled his legs around the wolf's neck like a python. Then he hammered down his right fist on top of the crossbow bolt. Bam! The bolt penetrated further into the wolf's skull and stabbed its brain. Adam continued to ruthlessly hammer down his fist on the bolt until the wolf completely stopped moving. After making sure that the beast had died, Adam felt like he had lost all strength in his body. He limply sprawled on the ground with the wolf's corpse still on top of him. A few moments later, he removed the corpse with great difficulty and slowly got to his feet. His left arm looked hideous as it was viciously chewed on by the wolf. He was drenched in blood and looked like a demon that had risen from the pits of hell. He looked around, and his gaze finally landed upon Jeffrey, who was helping out the others. "I'll kill you," Adam growled as he slowly walked toward Jeffrey. He was full of unprecedented bloodlust. He had never taken his earlier scuffles with the other children seriously, but it looked like he had been naive. Just because he didn't plan to kill others didn't necessarily mean that others wouldn't kill him. And to think that Jeffrey would attempt to kill him for such a petty reason. The moment Jeffrey laid eyes on Adam, his knees buckled and he fell to the ground. The image of Adam drenched in blood and walking toward him with reckless, murderous intent made him shudder. He's alive. Jeffrey couldn't believe that Adam was able to make it out alive. He was certain that the wolf would devour him. He raised his trembling hands and pleaded, "Adam, W8. It was a mistake, I promise." Adam refused to listen. He slowly walked toward Jeffrey with a broken sword in his hand. His sword had already been destroyed from the constant fighting earlier. Just when he was a few meters away from Jeffrey, the blond man with bright blue eyes and wearing an olive-colored cloak appeared right in between them. The blue-eyed man first looked at Jeffrey, causing the latter to tremble in fear. Then, he looked at the grievously wounded Adam, who didn't seem to be bothered by his presence at all. "This is not the time or the place for your dispute," he said calmly. But Adam protested. "I said this is not the place." The man interrupted him in a more strict tone. Seeing this, Jeffrey was relieved, and he complained. "Thank you for saving me, sir. If not for you, I would have." "Shut it," the blue-eyed man coldly said to Jeffrey. "Don't think I don't know what you did." "Shit." Jeffrey gulped and lowered his head, avoiding eye contact with the man. Two more people, a man and a woman, appeared out of nowhere and stood next to the blue-eyed man. All three of them wore the same cloaks. It was olive-colored and had a four-leaf clover insignia at the center of the chest. The man looked into the distance and saw a night wolf slightly bigger than the other wolves and muttered, "Seems to be on the verge of advancing to a rank 2 magic beast." "No wonder it was able to control such a large number of wolves," replied the blue-eyed man. "Let's combine our spells and get this over with," the woman spoke succinctly. The three Magi then jumped and landed beyond the blockade, made of wooden carriages. Instinctively, the surrounding wolves made distance for them, sensing the immense danger. "All right, time to get to work." The blue-eyed man cracked his knuckles. "Howl!" The wolf leader howled and commanded the pack to attack the three Magi who had dared to cross the blockade and obstruct them. However, the wolves were afraid of getting close to the Magi. In the end, they could only reluctantly attack. "Oomph." The female Magi scoffed. She had silver hair and cyan-colored eyes. She crouched down and placed both palms on the ground. A bright magic circle lit up underneath her palms. Rank 1 spell, Spill Water. A few seconds later, water was generated from the ground beneath her, and it quickly spread toward the wolf pack. This level of water didn't do any damage to the pack, neither did it impede them in any way. If anything, the water only made the ground a little wet. Next, the burly Magus with a buzz cut stepped forward and stomped on the ground. A magic circle had already materialized underneath his foot, and the moment it touched the ground, the earth rippled and the waves spread toward the wolf pack. Rank 1 spell, Shape Earth. At once, the ground had turned into an extremely muddy terrain. The majority of the wolves fell down as they lost balance. However, this was still not enough to defeat the pack. Finally, the blonde Magus with bright blue eyes weaved mysterious hand signs and then raised his right arm. The next moment, blue lightning crackled on his palm. Rank 1 spell, Shocking Grip. He viciously punched the muddy ground with his lightning-infused fist. Following that, the land in front of them turned into a sea of lightning. The three spells combined in harmony, resulting in a devastating attack. Instantly, a large number of wolves were electrocuted. Their fur was charred, and they struggled helplessly until they died. With a single move made by the three Magi, close to 100 wolves died. Whoa, amazing! This is the might of a Magus. The children who had gone through a hellish battle saw this scene, and their eyes lit up in amazement. For most of them, this was the first time they had seen a Magus in action. Even the experienced mercenaries were visibly moved. The teamwork displayed by the three Magi and their spell combo was truly a sight to behold. It left them awestruck. Adam wasn't all that impressed. After all, he had seen a much more grand and spectacular battle when he had acquired the White Lotus. However, he still couldn't keep his eyes off of the sea of lightning. The yearning in his heart intensified as he subconsciously clenched his fist. One day I'll become a Magus and wield such power as well. Suddenly, he felt his soul tremble and his eyes glazed over. On the other side, the alpha wolf was furious that so many of his brethren had been killed right in front of its eyes. It howled to the skies, and one could feel its pain and anger. The next moment, it opened its mouth and conjured an energy ball of absolute darkness. The ball of darkness got bigger and bigger until finally, it shot towards the three Magi at an extremely fast speed. The burly Magus stepped forward, weaved hand signs, and loudly clasped his palms together. Following that, the ground around him trembled, and then two thick and sturdy walls were erected in front of him. Rank 1 spell, Mold Earth. The ball of pure darkness collided against the earthen walls. A deafening sound was heard as dust and debris scattered in all directions. In the end, the ball of darkness had completely dissipated. At the same time, the two walls had also been destroyed. From within the dust and debris, the female Magus along with the blue-eyed Magus rushed out and sprinted toward the alpha wolf. Overcome by rage, the alpha wolf also rushed toward them as it prepared to launch another ball of darkness. However, before long, the two Magi had already come close to the wolf. They both cast spells simultaneously and combined them. Rank 1 spell, Thorn Vine. Rank 1 spell, Acidic Splash. A green vine as thick as one's arms materialized in the female Magus's hand, and she whipped it toward the alpha wolf. Before the whip had coiled around the wolf, the whole whip had already been coated with a layer of purple acid. This was the spell cast by the blue-eyed Magus. The ease at which both spells had combined showed how efficient their teamwork was. The purple vine ferociously wrapped around the wolf, instantly restricting its movements, and at the same time melting its fur and poisoning its skin with acid. Even the ball of darkness that was about to form inside the wolf's mouth had vanished. Completely restricted, the wolf showed a hint of panic as it glared at the two Magi. Suddenly, the ground behind the wolf cracked open and a figure jumped out from underneath. It was the burly Magus. Right now, he was wielding a heavy war hammer that seemed to be made out of some kind of black material. He lifted both his hands and imbued mana into his weapon. Then, he swung the war hammer down on the wolf's head with a wide grin on his face. "I gotcha!" Boom! The wolf was instantly pulverized by the hammer. All that was left was a mangled mixture of flesh, bones, and innards. Seeing their alpha die such a gruesome death, the remaining wolves all ran away with their tails tucked between their legs. "It's a pity. We could have sold the corpse for some money." The female Magus pouted. The burly Magus, Ivan, looked at the alpha's corpse, or the lack of one, and smiled embarrassedly. "My bad, Kelly." The female Magus, Kelly, shot one last glance at the mangled corpse of the wolf and then turned around and left. "Nicely done, Ivan. Don't mind her." The blue-eyed Magus gave Ivan a thumbs up. Ivan looked at his teammate and laughed. "Haha, you too, Alex. Come, let's get back to the carriage. I need your help understanding a spell model from the School of Invocation." "All right, let's go." Alex nodded and then went back to the carriage with Ivan. The surviving children and the mercenaries cheered for the victorious Magi as they came back to the campsite. The fight earlier was simply breathtaking. Even the mercenaries, who were always fighting with their lives on the line, were in awe of the teamwork displayed by the three. Alex and Ivan were indifferent to the applause and the looks of admiration directed at them. They were already used to it. Suddenly, Alex caught sight of Adam, who was standing in one location in a daze. The boy was sticking out like a sore thumb. "What's with this kid?" Alex mumbled. Currently, Adam was oblivious to what was happening around him as his mind had already shifted to the mysterious space within the White Lotus. Adam found himself floating in the mysterious white space once again. For a moment, he got frightened, but then his eyes lit up. "I'm finally back here." Ever since he acquired the White Lotus, he had been trying all sorts of ways to get inside this mysterious space, which he believed to be the interior of the Lotus. But no matter what he tried, he would never succeed. But now, all of a sudden, he found himself back in this place, and he was elated. He looked around at the bright white spots curiously. "I wasn't able to find out more about this place last time." Adam tried to swim around in the air. "Just what are these lights?" The words got stuck in his mouth when he saw what was happening in the distance. More and more glowing white spots were popping up. "What the?" Adam was speechless. He looked around and saw that bright spots were popping up everywhere, albeit at a slow rate. All of a sudden, close to 100 white spots appeared out of nowhere. Adam was stunned. Just what the hell is going on? He couldn't understand what these white spots were and how exactly they were appearing in this space. Hell, he didn't even know how he appeared in this place. The white spots had stopped popping up now. Adam swam towards the closest white spot. This mote of light was only the size of his nail. He took a few deep breaths to calm his beating heart. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. He encouraged himself and touched the light without hesitation. Adam closed his eyes in preparation for what was to come. To be honest, he didn't even know what he was expecting. Nothing happened for a few seconds, but then, calm, unprecedented tranquility. Adam felt as if his mind had expanded. Mentally, he felt rejuvenated. He had never felt such a satisfying sensation in his life. It was almost as if his soul had been strengthened. He didn't know for how long he was lost in this foreign feeling. Only when another white mote of light appeared in this mysterious space did he finally open his eyes. "I feel reborn." His eyes were shining as he looked around as if he had found treasure. Adam was extremely excited. "That feeling right now, I feel it's very beneficial for my soul." Adam didn't even know what a soul was. He had only heard a few bards mention it in their romantic songs. But he instinctively felt that the white motes in this space had strengthened him mentally. He looked at the thousands of motes of light in this mysterious space and involuntarily gulped. "What if I consume all these lights?" With a wide grin on his face, he swam to the closest white mote and stretched his hand out to grab it. But all of a sudden, he felt a firm hand on his shoulder, and the scene around him instantly changed. "Hey, you all right?" A voice snapped him back to his senses. "Huh?" Adam looked around in bewilderment. Where am I?" Alex looked at him in amusement. "Oh, did you pass out while standing on your feet? What a god." It took a moment for Adam to realize what exactly was happening. Looking around, he noticed that the wolves were nowhere to be seen. The mercenaries and the children were being tended to by the less injured ones. "It's over." He was relieved that they were out of danger. Before he could reply to the blue-eyed Magus, his eyes rolled over and he immediately lost consciousness. The gruesome battle from earlier, where he was almost killed by a wolf, and the massive blood loss from his left arm had left him incapacitated. Exhaustion finally overcame him. The radiant rays of the sun passed through the window of the moving carriage and gently landed on the face of a 15-year-old boy. The youth had taken an entire seat in the carriage and was sleeping soundly. This boy was none other than Adam. Slowly, he opened his eyes, which appeared to be deeper than before. He then got up and found that his left arm had been fully bandaged and there were bloodstains on it. Ow! He sharply breathed. Even a little bit of movement sent pangs of pain through his nerves. "Good morning, Adam." A cheerful voice entered his ears. Adam looked up and saw that it was a girl with brown hair who was smiling amiably at him. Adam was puzzled. This was the first time another child from the traveling party had greeted him. But then he realized why this was happening. In the battle last night, he had fended off many wolves and happened to save quite a lot of kids who were behind him. She must be one of them, I guess. Adam was certain in his heart. He forced a smile at the girl and asked, "Where are we currently?" One of the other children, a boy, beside her replied, "We're further inside the Crest Valley." "I see." Adam nodded. He was feeling slightly overwhelmed by the sudden friendliness shown by his peers. Until last night, everyone avoided him simply because of his status as a commoner. But after the kids saw him fight last night, they had a change of heart. Everyone respected the strong. Moreover, some of the children were also saved by Adam, so they were naturally grateful for him. Adam turned his head to look at the moving scenery outside the window. He had completely thrown out the matter of last night's gruesome battle, as well as Jeffrey's intention to kill him, to the back of his mind. What he was now pondering about was the mysterious space inside the White Lotus. His speculations about his soul being strengthened were already proving to be correct. He felt his perception increase ever so slightly, his thoughts were running smoothly, and overall, he felt his mind operate much better than before. But most importantly, Adam had a feeling that he now knew how to access that mysterious space at will. After asking the kids in the carriage what had transpired after the 3 Magi showed up on the battlefield last night, he learned that they had killed over 100 wolves in a single move. The 3 were still speaking excitedly about it. They had been completely amazed by the Magi's fighting abilities last night. Adam, on the other hand, was thinking of something else entirely. The number of bright spots that suddenly popped up in that mysterious space was also about the same. Adam connected the 2 dots and felt that it was too good to be a coincidence. Thinking back to the scene he had seen when he first acquired the White Lotus, Adam was slowly beginning to uncover the mystery behind this strange artifact. In that scene, when the black-armored Magus activated the White Lotus, all the other Magi died as a result. The Lotus took the lives of those thousands of Magi, close to 4,000, to be more precise. Slowly, the veil was being lifted by Adam. Suddenly, he thought of a terrifying possibility that caused him to shudder. The number of bright spots in the mysterious space should also be the same as the number of Magi that had died. Don't tell me. Adam subconsciously touched his forehead, his back drenched in cold sweat. The White Lotus can actually absorb souls. And not just that, I'm also able to consume these souls and strengthen my own. His mind was extremely conflicted. On one hand, he was beyond happy that he was able to acquire this heaven-defying artifact. But on the other hand, he feared what would happen if information about him possessing such a treasure was made known. From now on out, he had to be extremely vigilant about it. He had no idea if soul-related artifacts were common or rare, but he still decided to stay cautious. If such artifacts were common, no one would bat an eye if they found out that he had a soul-related artifact. But if they were rare? Thinking of this, he looked at the 3 kids in front of him and asked in a slightly tensed manner, "What happened after I passed out? How did I get in the carriage? Who dressed my wounds?" The children didn't think much about Adam's sudden change in behavior. One of them truthfully replied, "The blonde Magus carried you to the carriage, and then a mercenary dressed your wounds and applied medicine." Shit, Adam cursed inwardly. Was the Magus made aware of the White Lotus? He began to get nervous thinking about this possibility. But he soon calmed down and thought, no, I'm probably just overthinking things. How can an artifact that has the ability to vanish inside a person's body be so easily found? Thinking this, he gradually calmed down. But still, I should confirm my speculations. For now, he decided to get inside that mysterious space. He could still feel the presence of the lotus inside his body. To be precise, he believed that the lotus was actually inside his mind. He decided to give it a try and closed his eyes. Soon, he entered a tranquil state. His breathing was stable and his face calm. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself floating inside the mysterious space once again. Success! Adam smiled brightly. The process of entering this space was very instinctual to him, similar to how a newborn baby would start using their limbs to crawl and move around. He looked around and saw that the number of bright spots was about the same as the Magi that died in that vision. As I thought, this lotus really did suck all their souls. Adam swam toward the closest white spot and observed it. One by one, he observed the pure white spots around him and nodded. So this is what a soul is. Some spots were smaller than the size of his nail, giving him a very calm feeling. Others were bigger than a watermelon, making his heart palpitate. There were even some that were bigger than boulders. Clearly, he wasn't ready to absorb these big motes of light. Suddenly, Adam's vision fell on one of the smaller spots that seemed a bit peculiar. His brows furrowed, and he swam toward this mote of light. On the surface of this white spot, there were all sorts of colors flickering from time to time. What's wrong with this one? Adam thought for a long time and couldn't figure it out. Since he didn't feel any sense of danger from the mote of light, he decided to do just absorb it. The moment he touched this white spot, along with the sensation of his soul strengthening, there was something else that Adam felt, and he was shocked by it. A massive influx of information. Inside the moving carriage, Adam, who had his eyes closed at this moment, suddenly trembled and his expression twisted. He began sweating profusely. This continued for a few minutes until he finally opened his eyes. Gasp! He took a large mouthful of air like he'd been suffocating for eternity. He grabbed his head and groaned. It felt as if 1,000 ants were crawling all over his brain. His face had turned red, and veins were popping on the sides of his temples. Adam, what is it? What happened? Are you all right? The children panicked, seeing Adam in such a miserable state. Another minute later, the pain subsided, and Adam looked up at his 3 peers and spoke with difficulty. I'm fine. My wound is acting up. I just need some sleep. Without waiting for their reply, he closed his eyes and lay down. He then went through this new information, or rather, foreign memories that were suddenly inside his head. After absorbing that white mote of light, not only did his soul become stronger, but he also received a small portion of the memories of what he assumed to be one of the many Magi that had died in that vision. It took him a long time to sort out these new memories that were clashing with his own. Finally, just before sunset, he was able to organize these memories. Thanks to the strengthening of his soul, the whole process didn't seem arduous at all. Adam opened his eyes and sat back up. He had a strange look on his face as he mumbled, "Herbalism." Another 2 weeks passed by, and the traveling party was almost near the borders of the Nightingale Kingdom. The danger-filled wilderness had given way to lush farmlands as far as the eye could see. Every now and then, the traveling party would come across hamlets and villages. After seeing signs of civilization, the children were extremely happy. After all, the last 3 months of traveling had really taken a toll on them. After the attack of the wolf pack, the party wasn't attacked by magic beasts anymore. To be more precise, a few magic beast groups attacked them, but the 3 Magi had jointly taken care of them in advance. About 6 children had perished in the previous wolf attack. If the Magi wanted to, they could have saved these unfortunate kids. But why would they? Firstly, as cruel as it sounded, the Magi wanted to discard the bad seeds from this batch of children. This ensured that the children who did enroll at the academy were the best of the best. If the kids couldn't even survive a mere magic beast pack, then they could forget about embarking on the path of Magus. It sounded grim, but such was the cruel world they lived in. It was difficult to survive, and resources were scarce, especially for a Magus. Secondly, this was also a test for the children, albeit an unofficial one. To become a Magus, not only was talent and aptitude necessary, but also courage and prudence. Through the attack of the wolf pack, The three Magi were able to examine the kids who were able to put their lives on the line and fight using either their brains or brawn. The surviving 60 or so kids had all made the cut. Over the past 2 weeks, Adam wasn't able to practice his sword because of his injury. The mercenaries had run out of healing potions, and Adam didn't have the guts to ask for one from either of the Magi. So, Adam spent the last 2 weeks consuming souls and expanding his knowledge of herbalism. Herbalists were very sought after in the Magus community, and he knew for a fact that herbalists or potion masters were very wealthy. So, he decided to assimilate the memories related to herbalism so that he could get an edge over other students. At the very least, selling magical potions would ensure that he had a steady source of income. Adam would go to the space inside the lotus every day and absorb the smaller white motes of light. He could see the progress with his own eyes, and he was extremely ecstatic about it. His perception had increased to a level he hadn't thought was possible. Other than that, he felt as if his thought-making process had become quicker and a lot smoother. On this day, Adam was sitting inside the wooden carriage with his eyes closed and going through the knowledge of herbs and natural ingredients. After absorbing the memories, he felt great familiarity with the usage of herbs, like he'd been practicing it all his life. Not just the knowledge, but even the experiences of the Magi were absorbed by Adam. The different uses and properties of potions thoroughly fascinated him, and he couldn't wait to give it a try. He was certain he could make a lot of money if he put this knowledge to use. The sunset was about half an hour away, so the traveling party stopped by a lake and prepared to make camp. All the children got down from the carriages and started helping the mercenaries. They weren't the same kids they were when they started their journey. After going through so much in the past 3 months, they had matured. Things like setting up tents and making campfires were beneath these children of noble birth. But now they were simply grateful to have a roof over their heads, some food in their stomach, and most importantly to have made it out alive through this perilous journey. Adam got out of the carriage and looked around as he breathed in the fresh air. Suddenly, his gaze fell on Jeffrey and they made eye contact. Adam's eyes instantly turned cold and he glared at Jeffrey. Jeffrey immediately looked away and distanced himself from Adam. Ever since that incident that night, Jeffrey had been avoiding Adam like the plague. Adam's eyes narrowed as he stared at Jeffrey's departing back. Sooner or later, I'll kill you. He had never felt such hatred for another person before. Thinking back to how he had almost died that night, Adam was furious. He cursed under his breath and went the other way. In the distance, he saw the 3 Magi alighting from the carriage and sitting on boulders by the lakeside. The burly Magus, Ivan, and the female Magus with the silver hair, Kelly, were busy reading books. Meanwhile, the blonde Magus, Alex, was staring into the distance of the lake, throwing pebbles across its surface. Adam's eyes lit up as he unhesitatingly walked toward Alex. In the past few weeks, he didn't have a chance to speak with the Magus, but now he finally did. He only hoped that Alex was also willing to talk to him. Hearing footsteps approaching him, Alex turned his head and looked at Adam with a faint smile. "It's you." Adam walked to him and respectfully greeted, "Good day, Sir Magus." Seeing Adam act so stiff, Alex found it funny. "What is it, kid?" "Sir, I didn't get the chance earlier, but I would like to thank you for taking care of me after I passed out on the night of the wolf attack." Adam tried to speak like a gentleman. "Take care of you?" Alex chuckled. "I simply chucked you inside the carriage. I didn't really take care of you." Adam's eyes twitched. "Still, thank you." Judging from the casual conversation between them, Adam was more or less certain that Alex didn't know about the existence of the White Lotus. Still, he couldn't be 100% sure about it, so he decided to remain vigilant anyway. Suddenly, Alex asked, "Where did you learn to wield the sword?" "Huh." Adam was slightly taken aback. He thought that his sword skills might have caught the Magus' eyes. So, he puffed out his chest and spoke with pride. "I learned it on my own, sir. No wonder it's so crude and barbaric." Alex nodded in understanding. Adam's expression froze. A moment later, he forced a smile and softly muttered, "I'll work on it." He then thought of something and asked, "Sir, if you don't mind, may I ask you something?" "Go ahead." Alex liked the boy's respectful attitude and didn't mind entertaining him a little. Adam took a deep breath and asked, "Sir, can you tell me about the Clover Academy's entrance examination?" Every year, the Clover Academy holds an entrance examination to recruit prospective Magi from the neighboring kingdoms. Alex began explaining patiently. There are 3 tests in total that one must pass. The first is a comprehensive aptitude test, the second is an analytical test, and the final one is the combat test. There's even a combat test. Adam was slightly surprised. Alex nodded. Yes, and if you perform well in the entrance examination, you'll be rewarded by the Academy. Oh, Adam's eyes lit up. He wanted to ask more about the tests, but decided against it. He didn't want to bother the Magus too much. He then sincerely said, "Thank you very much for sharing this information with me, Sir Magus. Don't worry about it." Alex waved his hand nonchalantly. Suddenly, he thought of something and added, "Oh, and one more thing. Killing is prohibited on school campus, and even within Moon City such crimes are highly punishable." Adam was stunned. He then heard Alex add, "However, it's a different thing if you choose to settle scores with someone outside the city." Alex already knew of the dispute between Adam and Jeffrey. Since he had a good impression of Adam, he decided to advise him. "I understand, sir. Thank you," Adam replied after a few moments, and then turned around and went back to the campsite. On the way back, he coldly stared at Jeffrey, who was chatting with a few kids. In the end, he walked past him without saying a word. Jeffrey saw him walk by, and his eyes flashed coldly. He gritted his teeth and thought to himself, "You got lucky the last time. Wait till I become a Magus. I'll deal with you then." After the indirect warning from Magus Alex the last time, Jeffrey didn't dare to make a move on Adam. Both the boys wanted nothing more than to kill each other, but they couldn't. Not yet, anyway. In the blink of an eye, another week had passed, and the traveling party was almost at the end of its journey. In the distance, the silhouette of Moon City could be seen. The party had been traveling from the southeast, so they'd be entering the city from the southward. Whoa, is that Moon City? Heavens, it's so big. The buildings look so tall, even from this distance. Wow, and there are so many tall trees in the city as well. The children stuck their heads out from the carriage windows and looked into the distance. Their eyes were shining with curiosity, and they couldn't hide their excitement. This was the most famous city in the southern part of the continent, known as the Jewel of the South, and they'd be living here for the foreseeable future. How could they not be enthusiastic? Adam also looked out of the window and couldn't help but smile brightly. Amazing. Just the southward of the city is many times bigger than my hometown. I wonder how big the entire city is. Within an hour, the traveling party had already arrived near one of the 2 main gates of the South Ward. Everyone could now clearly see the tall boundary walls that guarded the city. It consisted of 3 layers of thick, sturdy walls. The outermost wall was the shortest, and each subsequent wall increased in height. The walls were patrolled by knights in silver armor. Under the light of the sun, they looked very heroic. "Halt! State your purpose." One of the silver armor guards at the gate stopped right in front of the leading carriage and blocked the way. The leader of the mercenary group got off the horse and took out a scroll from underneath his leather armor. He handed the scroll to the guard and respectfully said, "We are the Crescent Mercenary Company, and we're escorting children who are going to take the entrance exam for the Clover Academy." The guard removed his silver visor and read the scroll. He then signaled to his men, "Check all the carriages." Although he was already aware of this local mercenary company, he still had to carry out his duties diligently. "Just let us through already." Ivan looked out of the carriage and grumbled. The guard saw the Clover insignia on Ivan's clothes and bowed respectfully. "Apologies, Lord Magus. These are the rules of the city." Alex, who was sitting in the same carriage as Ivan, patted his shoulder. "They're just doing their jobs. Let be." Ivan harumphed at the guard but did not say anything further. The guards checked the carriages one by one and finally allowed the traveling party to enter the city. Adam was in a carriage that was towards the back of the traveling party, so he was one of the last ones to enter the city. When the carriage passed through the 18-foot-high adamantine gate, Adam was wide-eyed as he marveled. "Whoa, this is the biggest gate I've seen in my life." As soon as the carriage passed through the gate, a cacophony of sounds entered Adam's ears. The sidewalks were full of people from different kinds of races. Besides humans, there were the fair and beautiful elves, the stout and hardy dwarves, and the small and cheerful gnomes. This was the first time that Adam had seen so many people from different races in one place. Before this, he'd only heard about them from wandering bards. This was an eye-opening experience for him. The road they were currently traveling on was called South Lunar Avenue, and it connected the South Ward to the Lunar Bridge, which in turn connected to the North Lunar Avenue in the North Ward. All the roads in the city were made of cobblestones, and the sidewalks were completely packed with people and stalls. Here, one could see people of different races mingling with one another. One thing Adam noticed was the abundance of trees in the city. An earthy scent permeated the city, making one feel refreshed. There was vegetation flourishing almost everywhere he looked. Some trees were taller than buildings, some buildings were taller than trees, and there were even buildings that were actually trees. Adam stuck his neck out and saw a bridge made of tree branches right above the street. The buildings and houses were made up of stone and wooden beams. In the distance, Adam could see a tall tree with many windows. Clearly, people were living in it. Seeing the number of brick-and-mortar stores and the temporary roadside stalls, one could tell that trade was flourishing in Moon City. And it indeed was. Moon City was the greatest mercantile city in the Southern Federation. After about 20 minutes, the traveling party stopped in front of a large archway made of marble. At the center of the archway, above the entrance, was a four-leaf clover symbol. Adam looked at the symbol and was incomparably excited. "We're here." The children got off the carriages with their belongings, excitement etched all over their faces. All of them huddled at the academy's entrance, impatient to get in. However, the three Magi who had been traveling with them stood in front of the group of children. Alex, who was standing at the center, solemnly spoke. "Over the last 3 months, you all have endured great difficulty, overcome life-threatening challenges, and finally made it to Moon City. Good job." The children were overwhelmed by emotions and cheered loudly. For these kids who were born with a silver spoon, the last 3 months were truly hellish. Most of them standing here right now couldn't help but cry tears of joy. However, Alex interrupted their happy moment and doused them with a bucket of cold water. "All of you are still not students of Clover Academy, and thus cannot enter the campus grounds." "What? How can that be? What do you mean? Where are we supposed to go?" At once, there was a loud clamor amongst the children. Some of them even started sobbing and screaming about how life was unfair. Silence. Ivan instantly shut everyone up. Alex continued, "The academy examination is 7 days away. Until then, all of you are to stay at Sherman's Inn." He pointed at the tall building in the distance that was enclosing an even taller tree in the middle. "The inn is the property of Clover Academy, and since you all are prospective students of the academy, you will be given a large discount," Alex added. "What? We still have to pay. Injustice. This is bullying." The children protested with tearful eyes, but the three Magi couldn't care less. The kids could only helplessly nod their heads and silently shed tears. Jeffrey and a few other kids wore extremely ugly expressions. All their money had already been extorted by Adam. Were they supposed to stay for the next week? On the streets? Adam, realizing this, looked at Jeffrey and a few other children with a mocking grin. At the same time, he even dangled his bulging money pouch and showed it to them, as if provoking, "What are you going to do about it?" Jeffrey and the few kids around him gritted their teeth and clenched their fists as they hatefully stared at the youth. In their minds, they were vehemently cursing Adam and his ancestors. After teasing them a bit more, Adam turned his attention back to Alex. "The city is completely safe. However, you all should still make it a habit to not wander around on the streets after sunset. You may do whatever you like, but make sure to arrive at this place 7 days from now at sunrise. That is all. You are dismissed." Alex then turned around and went inside the campus with Ivan and Kelly. They still had to report the completion of their mission. The mercenaries who were still standing with a group of children bade their farewells and left as well. The children formed into smaller groups and started exploring the city. "Jeffrey, what do we do? That demon took all our money. We have nowhere to go." I heard the academy entrance fee is 10 platinum pieces. Where am I supposed to get that much money? Yes, yes. Jeffrey, we're all in this mess because of you. You must help us. Listening to these kids complaining, Jeffrey flew into a rage. You idiots! How is this my fault? Seeing his peers remain anxious, he couldn't help but soften his tone a little. There's a mercantile guild here in Moon City. We can go there and pawn off our gems and other ornaments. The children's eyes lit up and they all agreed. They should be able to borrow just enough money for the entrance fees after pawning off their belongings. Jeffrey's hatred for Adam increased even more. He tried to look for Adam, but the youth was nowhere to be seen. For all the trouble you've caused me, I'll make you wish you were dead. Jeffrey gnashed his teeth in fury. He then led his small group to the Mercantile Guild. The entire campus of Clover Academy covered the majority of the South Ward. The rest of the ward housed taverns, inns, a bustling market, and houses that catered to the students of the academy. One could argue that the Clover Academy encompassed the whole of South Ward. This was a testament to the prestige of the academy, as they were able to occupy such a large area in the capital city of the Nightingale Kingdom. The market district was situated on the banks of River Orei, right next to the docks. Many ships were docked at the harbor, and the sailors could be seen carrying items to and fro. Seeing the lively harbor and the market, Adam was speechless. Such a level of human activity was definitely not seen in his hometown. Hell, it probably wasn't even seen in the capital of Cormier Kingdom. He looked at everything with amazement. After admiring the bustling docks for a few more minutes, he gradually made his way through the crowd and went to the deeper parts of the market. He also made sure to tightly grab onto his money pouch. If someone stole his hard-earned money, he wouldn't know what to do. All sorts of items could be found in the market, from fresh produce harvested by humans to weapons forged by dwarves. There were roadside stalls as well as proper brick-and-mortar stores. Adam looked at the bustling crowd with fascination. He could see people haggling with one another, little children playing hide-and-seek as they ran through the alleys, old people laughing and telling stories to others, and bards singing and entertaining people. It truly is the jewel of the South, Adam muttered with a smile. Although he hadn't visited any other cities, he had a feeling that no other city in the southern part of the continent could outshine the splendor of Moon City. After exploring most of the market district, he finally found what he was looking for. He stood in front of a store, the entrance of which was decorated with beautiful flowers and exotic plants. There was a wooden plaque on top of the store's entrance, and on it was carved the name of the store. Adam read it out aloud, herbs and more. He gently stroked his injured and bandaged left arm as he walked inside the store. He had been meaning to take care of his injury for a while now. It was becoming really unbearable. Adam opened the door and walked in. However, the moment he stepped foot inside, his eyes widened in shock. A large two-headed vulture screeched menacingly and immediately pounced on him. Seeing the terrifying maw closing in on him, Adam froze in fear. This was completely unexpected. At once, many thoughts appeared in his head. Why is this beast attacking me? Isn't killing forbidden inside the city? Why is this happening to me? Am I going to die? All of a sudden, in the depths of his soul, the white lotus seemed to have come alive as it started gently rotating and giving off a calming aura. In that instant, Adam felt his mind clear up and he gained clarity. The fear in his eyes vanished, and he quickly composed himself. He was surprised that the two-headed vulture in front of him had turned into a gray, foggy silhouette. Adam's eyes narrowed, and he muttered softly, "A fake." The next moment, the menacing vulture easily passed through his body and dissipated in the air. Adam was still rooted on the spot, wondering what had just transpired. "Oh, you were able to see through the illusion." A slightly surprised voice echoed inside the store. "Who's there?" Adam looked around in alarm, but couldn't find anyone. "Down here, you fool. What in the world?" Adam looked down, and his gaze landed on a midget. It was an old midget with fair skin, a shiny bald head, pointy ears, and a thick white beard. The midget was about 4 feet tall and was wearing black boots, brown pants, and a white tunic. Just as Adam was looking at the midget, The latter was also curiously scrutinizing the youth. After all, Adam was able to see through his illusion, and the most surprising thing was that Adam was a normal person with no exposure to mana. Adam's eyes lit up as he stared at the midget who was smoking from a pipe. He crouched down and asked excitedly, "Wow, are you a dwarf? This is the first time I'm ouch." However, before Adam could finish what he was about to say, the midget grabbed his smoking pipe and knocked the youth on the head. "Oomph, I'm a gnome, not a dwarf." The gnome harumphed and then started smoking from his pipe again. Adam rubbed his forehead and grumbled, "Sorry, sir." The gnome nodded. He looked deeply at Adam and asked, "Now tell me, boy, how did you see through my illusion? Although it was only a minor illusion spell, it should have been impossible for a layperson like you to see through it." "Ah, so it was an illusion," Adam thought to himself. He looked at the gnome and confirmed. "And this person is a Magus." Back then, when Adam saw the two-headed vulture pounce at him, he felt the white lotus resonate for a brief moment. He knew that it was because of the lotus that he was able to see through the illusion. However, he couldn't say that to the old gnome. Hence, he replied innocently, "What do you mean see through it? I just instinctively knew that the vulture was a fake." Instinct. The gnome looked straight into Adam's eyes for a few moments, trying to discern the truth. "Fine, whatever." The gnome waved his hand and then walked back to the wooden counter, seemingly having lost interest. Adam followed behind him and asked, "By the way, sir, why did you cast that illusion in the first place? I almost pee myself, you know." The gnome chuckled mischievously as he took yet another puff from the pipe. What's life without some fun and excitement? Adam resisted the urge to roll his eyes. He looked around the store and discovered that it was much larger than it appeared to be from the outside. The walls were filled with rows of wooden shelves, each shelf containing various sorts of herbs, spices, flowers, etc. At the center of the shop, there was a small waiting area for the customers where couches and tea tables were kept. A pleasant medicinal aroma pervaded the entire store, making one feel relaxed. Behind the waiting area was a wooden counter where the gnome was sitting, and behind the counter, there were countless books neatly placed on the shelves. Some books looked new, and some looked extremely worn out. On another wall, there were various potions of different colors organized properly. Apart from potions, there were even ointments and oil. Due to the memory he had absorbed, Adam was able to identify the majority of the items in there. And this was just the first floor. A spiral staircase led to the second floor, but Adam didn't know what lay there. He walked toward the wall where the potions were kept. All sorts of potions were carefully stored inside translucent crystal vials and flasks. Adam's eyes lit up as he caught sight of what looked like a healing potion. He walked toward it and immediately grabbed it. He then opened the cork of the vial and took a whiff of the refreshing aroma. Seeing Adam's rude behavior, the gnome was angry. "Boy, don't go around touching things without perm." However, the words soon got stuck in his throat. Honey from the tiger honey bees, Capri's moss, stem of the voile glow plant, and Adam swirled the red liquid inside the vial and continued. "There seems to be some sort of earthen powder mixed in. I'm not sure what the last one is." He looked at the gnome and asked, "Sir, this earthen powder should be from your experiments, yes?" The gnome was shocked. He looked at Adam, then at the potion, and then back again at Adam. Clearly, this boy is a normal human with no mana running in his veins. Then how? He thought. He asked incredulously, "Boy, how do you know so much about herbalism? I refuse to believe that you're an herbalist." Adam realized that he might have run his mouth more than necessary. When he saw the potions, he was eager to use the knowledge that he had gained from absorbing the memories of that expert. Adam laughed sheepishly and lied through his teeth. "I only know some theoretical knowledge. Of course, I'm not a herbalist, sir. I'm not even a magus yet." The old gnome was silent for a long time. He then walked around the counter and toward Adam. He grabbed the vial from the youth's hand and nodded. "You're right. One of the ingredients is the powder I obtained from the shell of a lakeworm. It is a product of my experiment." "I see." Adam nodded. Although the memory he absorbed had vast amounts of herbalism knowledge, he didn't believe that this knowledge comprised all the herbs and ingredients in the world. After all, countless unknown ingredients could be found in different places. "Sir, I would like to buy this healing potion," Adam respectfully stated. "5 platinum pieces," the gnome replied flatly. "Alternatively, you can also pay 50 gold pieces." Adam inhaled sharply. "So expensive." The gnome smiled mischievously and proposed. "Of course, I can also give it to you for free." Adam became vigilant. What do you want in return?" "Hee hee, you're not as dumb as you look." The old gnome smirked. "In exchange for the healing potion, I'd like you to introduce me to your herbalism teacher." In the gnome's eyes, one had to practice diligently for a lifetime to be able to do what Adam had just done. To be able to identify the ingredients used in a potion by just a simple look and a whiff was no easy thing. That too, as a normal person. Therefore, the gnome believed that the Magus who taught Adam herbalism must be an extraordinary herbalist. And not just that, Adam himself must really be a gifted genius in the field of herbalism. If he was already able to display such shocking abilities before becoming a Magus, then what would happen once he finally embarked on the path of a Magus and started brewing potions? And the reason why the gnome wanted to meet Adam's teacher was also very simple: the pursuit of knowledge. Herbalists and artificers were extremely rare among Magi. Therefore, the gnome wouldn't miss out on an opportunity to meet with another fellow herbalist and exchange herbalism knowledge. My herbalism teacher? How come I don't know about him?" Adam stood there in a daze, wondering just how the old gnome had come to such a conclusion. "Pow!" The gnome smacked Adam in the forehead with his smoking pipe again. "Don't just stand there like a fool. Answer me, boy." "Ouch!" Adam massaged his forehead. It had swollen by now. He looked at the gnome with tearful eyes. "I cannot agree to the exchange because—" "Because what?" the gnome asked impatiently. Adam lied effortlessly with clenched fists. "Because my teacher has already left." "Left?" The gnome's eyebrows furrowed. "What do you mean?" Adam had a reminiscent look on his face. It was almost 5 years back. That day, the black clouds had dotted the sky, signaling the arrival of heavy rain. "Pow! Don't test my patience, boy." The old gnome roared as he smacked Adam's forehead again. "Get to the damn point." All right." Adam knelt on the ground and obediently explained. "The truth is, when I was 10 years old, I met a mysterious woman who was grievously injured. I tended to her wounds and cared for her for days until she was back on her feet again. To repay my favor, she taught me all the herbalism knowledge she knew and even carried out a test that confirmed that I had the gift for spellcasting. It took her a few years to fully recover. During this time, she taught me all the theoretical knowledge about herbalism. She even let me help her with her experiments and taught me her experiences in potion brewing. After she fully recovered, she left for faraway lands. Where? I do not know, but before leaving, she recommended me to join the Clover Academy." Adam maintained eye contact with the gnome and narrated a beautifully crafted fraudulent story. Of course, there were some truths mixed in as well. It was true that he had come across a wandering Magus back in his hometown many years back. He did spend some time with her, and during this time, the Magus tested his talent for spellcasting and showed him the path to becoming a Magus. That was to join Clover Academy. But the rest of the story was pure bullshit. The gnome stroked his dense, white beard and nodded from time to time. "So a random act of kindness led you down the path of a Magus, eh?" "Yes, sir." Adam nodded. "And it seems that you have a gift for herbalism as well," the gnome mumbled. After a few moments, the gnome seemed to have lost interest since he could not meet the Magus who had taught Adam herbalism. He walked back to the counter and started reading a book. "Well, if it's like this, then there's no helping it. 5 platinum pieces and the healing potion is all yours. Can I get a discount?" Adam asked softly. After extorting money from the few kids in the traveling party, he had only managed to accumulate 13 platinum coins, 323 gold coins, and some silver and bronze coins. From the kids traveling with him, he came to know that the entry fee for the academy was set at 10 platinum pieces, so there was no way he could spend the platinum coins for the potion. And it seemed that platinum pieces were extremely rare. Out of the few kids he had extorted money out of, only Jeffrey had platinum coins. Back in his hometown, Adam didn't even know about the existence of platinum coins. The highest denomination he had ever used was a silver coin. Seeing Adam shamelessly ask for a discount, the gnome yelled, "Get lost!" Or relax, no need to get mad. Adam took out 50 gold pieces with a pained expression and gave them to the gnome. "Here, you cheap little bugger." Seeing Adam's bulging money pouch, the gnome couldn't help but scoff. Adam took the healing potion and carefully kept it in his pocket. He then bade farewell to the gnome. "Thank you, sir. See you later." With that, he turned around and left the store. After Adam left, the grumpy expression on the old gnome's face slowly disappeared and was replaced by a faint smile. "What an interesting little fellow. Welcome to Sherman's Inn. How may I help you?" A blonde young lady wearing a white dress with green-patterned embroidery greeted Adam with a bright smile. She was standing behind a reception desk, which seemed to be made up of high-quality wood. After leaving the gnome's store, he directly went to the inn that Magus Alex had recommended. Besides, it was beginning to get dark and Adam didn't want to stay out, even though he knew it was completely safe. "I need a room. For a week." Adam got straight to the point. "Sir, are you here for the Academy's entrance examination?" "That's right." Adam nodded. "Great." After the discount, the total would come to 10 silver and 50 bronze pieces. The lady replied, "That's so expensive." Adam blurted out. The young lady's eyes couldn't help but twitch as she struggled to maintain her professional smile. She couldn't help but wonder just where this bum came from. Still, she replied with a courteous smile. "This is a fine establishment, sir, and the total amount also covers excellent dining options thrice a day. If it weren't for the student discount, you'd have to pay 3 times more." Daylight robbery. Adam screamed in his heart. However, he still took out the money and paid the full amount. After the paperwork was finished, a young boy dressed in black who seemed to be about Adam's age guided him to his room. "This way, sir." Adam followed after him into the large, open courtyard at the center of the building where the huge tree was located. Much to his astonishment, Adam discovered that people were actually staying inside the tree. The boy brought Adam to his room, which was at the center of the tree's trunk, bowed respectfully, and then left. "Whoa!" Adam looked at his room with bright eyes. "This place sure is fancy." He took his time checking out the room. When he finally went to the balcony and looked at the view outside, his eyes widened in shock. Past the numerous stone buildings and verdant trees in the south ward lay a magical bridge that connected it to the north ward. The sun had already set and the sky was dyed a shade of velvety dark. The twin moons, Selene and Luna, appeared high up in the night sky and bathed the lands below in an ethereal glow. The lunar bridge, undisputedly the most famous landmark in Moon City, reflected the splendor of the twin moons and shone brilliantly. From his balcony, Adam could see this awe-inspiring sight and couldn't help but marvel at it. So beautiful! The bridge looked like it was made of countless little stars. Adam had never seen something so spectacular in his life. He looked at it for a few minutes and then sighed emotionally. The world of magic is truly fascinating. He went back into his room and sat down on the couch. Slowly, he unwrapped the bloodied bandage on his left arm, all the while wincing in pain. Next, he took out the healing potion, uncorked it, and downed it in one go. A sweet taste permeated in his mouth, followed by a slightly bitter taste. Within a minute, he felt an itching sensation in his left arm that only increased with each passing second. Adam grimaced as he focused on his injured arm. Slowly, the bones began to heal and the tendons and muscles began to restore themselves. This continued for a minute, and then finally the skin also regenerated. In a matter of minutes, his originally crippled arm was completely healed. What should have left me crippled for a lifetime was healed in just minutes. Adam's eyes shone brightly as he moved around his once-injured arm. After testing out the efficacy of the healing potion, he went to the bathroom and took a long shower. Then, he climbed onto the bed and bounced on it a few times. So fluffy and luxurious, huh? After playing around a little more, he finally lay down and stared at the wooden ceiling. In 7 days, the examination takes place. I can't wait to join the academy. Adam let his thoughts run wild and soon went to sleep. In the blink of an eye, a week had passed and the day of Clover Academy's entrance examination had finally arrived. Adam's eyes shone with excitement and anticipation as he walked the crowded cobblestone streets of the South Ward. He was wearing a dark blue tunic that had white seams. His sleeves were rolled up to his elbow, displaying his toned forearms. He was also wearing white cotton pants and black bamboo shoes. His outfit looked neat, but they'd been washed so many times that they were nearly worn out. His jet black hair was parted from middle. His hair had grown a lot since he left his hometown, and now it reached his shoulders. The distance from Sherman's Inn to the entrance of the academy was only a few hundred meters. Very soon, the white marble archway was visible to Adam. This was the entrance to the academy. However, soon he was stunned. So many people. He muttered in astonishment. Hundreds of children had lined up in an orderly manner outside the academy's entrance. At a rough count, there were at least 500 children gathered here. Looks like children from all over the Nightingale Kingdom, as well as the other kingdoms of the Southern Federation, have come to enroll at the academy. Adam thought to himself as he calmly walked toward the end of the queue. Hey, everyone, look at this guy. Where does he think he is? Haha, what a clown. Is he lost? Go back to the rice fields, farm boy. When the nearby children caught sight of Adam, standing in the queue, they couldn't help but be amused. After all, although Adam was wearing clean clothes, it was undoubtedly of highly inferior quality. Clearly, he looked like he didn't belong here. Adam ignored the others and stood silently with his arms crossed and eyes closed. Although he felt disgruntled by the harsh words spoken by others, he didn't wish to banter with them at the moment. His full focus was on the examination. A freckled youth standing right in front of Adam saw him and thought of having some fun. He turned around and intimidatingly stared at Adam. Boy, peasant, why don't you go tend to the cattle? This caused the other children to burst into raucous laughter. However, Adam remained unfazed. Seeing this, the freckled youth was slightly annoyed. He firmly clasped Adam's shoulder and repeated, Bastard, didn't you hear me? I said go back to the... But the words got stuck in his throat. Adam opened his black abyss-like eyes and glared at the boy. Piss off. The freckled boy's knees weakened, and he stumbled back a few steps. Beads of cold sweat began forming on his forehead. When he looked into Adam's eyes, he felt his head hurt for some reason, and this scared him down to his core. He couldn't help but avoid eye contact with Adam. Immediately, he left the place and ran away, finally standing at the end of the queue, far away from Adam. The rest of the children were stunned seeing what had just transpired. They simply thought that the freckled boy was a coward. But still, they stopped bothering Adam after this incident. Over the past week, Adam spent all his time absorbing souls and going through herbalism knowledge. After absorbing tens of small motes of light, his soul had strengthened tremendously. Adam's soul would sometimes emit a very minute amount of pressure. This is exactly what happened when the freckled youth looked into his eyes. The boy's soul was feeling overwhelmed by the pressure Adam's soul was releasing. In fact, Adam's soul was already as strong as someone who had just recently become a rank 1 Magus. However, after absorbing so many souls inside the mysterious space of the White Lotus, he was beginning to feel full. He suspected that soon he would reach a point where he wouldn't be able to consume any more motes of light. When that happened, he didn't know what he would do or how he would proceed. Very soon, a group of people wearing dark green cloaks with a 4-leaf clover crest came out of the academy and stood in front of all the children present. An old man, standing in the middle of the group, loudly declared, "The Clover Academy's entrance examination will now begin. Everyone, follow me." For the first time, these children entered the compounds of Clover Academy. They were excited and jubilant, to say the least. The children followed after the group of Magi obediently. No one dared to act out of line. The campus was full of greenery. Amidst the various exotic trees and small ponds, one could find stone and wood column buildings with beautiful architecture. After walking for a few minutes, the group finally stopped at a large clearing where dozens of tents were erected. The Magi turned around and the old Magus from earlier spoke once again. "This is the first hurdle that you all must pass. the aptitude test. Suddenly, there was a clamor amidst the hundreds of children. But the next moment, the old Magus continued speaking. Although his voice was subtle, weirdly enough, every single child could hear him speak as if he were right next to them. The minimum requirement we expect from all our students is a C-grade aptitude. Below that, and you will be eliminated. The Clover Academy will not invest time and resources to nurture a Magus that does not have the talent to go far on the path. All the children were now visibly nervous. After all, they weren't aware of the fact that there would be a cutoff during the aptitude test. All the students present knew that they had a talent for spellcasting, but what grade talent they had that they didn't know. Adam was confused about this whole grading thing. Thus, he asked the nearest person about it. "Excuse me, how many aptitude grades are there?" A fatty wearing a luxurious black silk robe with golden seams who happened to be standing near Adam looked at him weirdly. "You don't even know this?" Adam smiled awkwardly, trying to come up with an excuse. But the next moment, the fatty began explaining. "Whatever. I'm guessing it's not common knowledge where you're from." This guy, Adam was surprised to find an amiable person who didn't judge him based on his appearance. This was a first for him. The fatty continued. "There are 5 grades, A, B, C, D, and F. A being the highest, and F being the lowest." "Wait a minute," Adam interrupted. "What happened to E?" "Interesting question." The fatty's eyes twitched, and he fell into deep thought. "Forget about it. Don't stress the small stuff. As I was saying, E is the highest, and F is the lowest. Basically, aptitude determines how far a Magus can advance in their paths. Having a higher grade aptitude means a person is more likely to advance through greater ranks." "I see." Adam nodded in understanding. He then looked at the fatty and stretched out his hand with a smile. "Thanks for explaining. I'm Adam." The fatty shook Adam's hand. "I'm Edward. By the way, you're not from around here, are you?" "No, I'm from Cormier." Adam was about to reply, but their chat was interrupted by the Magus. "Now, all of you enter the tents one by one." The Magus instructed. Edward gave Adam a thumbs up. "See you on the other side." Adam smiled. "Good luck." He saw the fatty strutting away, his tummy jiggling up and down. Adam couldn't help but chuckle and think to himself, "I guess not all noble kids are rude and arrogant." The line slowly moved forward, and within a few minutes, Adam was standing at the entrance of a tent. He was waiting for the person before him to finish up with the test. A few moments later, a deep voice echoed from inside the tent. "Next." Adam took a deep breath and walked in. The inside of the tent was much larger than it appeared from the outside. A middle-aged man was standing at the center. He too was wearing a dark green cloak with a 4-leaf clover crest. "Stand at the center of this formation for as long as you can." The man spoke flatly while pointing at a diagram on the floor. This diagram was made of all sorts of geometrical shapes that Adam didn't quite understand. "All right." Adam nodded and stood at the center of the formation. The following moment, the man performed some hand gestures, and the various lines and geometrical patterns inside the formation lit up with a resplendent orange light. Adam closed his eyes and stood motionlessly on the formation. 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, 4 minute. Finally, beads of sweat began forming on Adam's forehead, and his body started to tremble. He felt a pressure on his body as well as his mind. However, the pressure on his mind was very mild, almost non-existent compared to the one on his body. He felt as if he was being submerged hundreds of miles underwater, and the pressure was threatening to pulverize his body. Adam gritted his teeth in pain and spoke in agony, "And no more." The next moment, the light from the formation dissipated. The man had deactivated it. He checked the time and nodded. "Good. B grade aptitude, although just barely." "Phew." Adam breathed a sigh of relief as he wiped the sweat from his forehead. He clenched his fists and muttered inwardly, "I passed." "Now, fill up this form and proceed to the next tent through the back exit." The man's attitude toward Adam was much more friendly now. He handed the youth a paper and showed him the way out. Adam borrowed a quill from the old Magus and filled up all the relevant information such as full name, date of birth, place of birth, aptitude, etc. After that, he exited the tent and came to another open clearing. He then went toward the nearest tent and waited patiently. As he looked around, he saw that the children had become much more sparse compared to before. The cutoff is really stringent. I'm afraid half of the children wouldn't make it past the first test. Indeed, only about 55% of the children would make it past the first test, and this number would only continue to decrease in the following test. Come in. The voice of a female came from within the tent. Adam walked in and found that the tent was much smaller compared to the last one. There was a simple wooden table at the center and 2 chairs. A young lady with burgundy hair was sitting on one chair and looking at him with a smile. "Hand me your form." "Ah, yes." Adam hurriedly gave her the form with both hands and remained standing. "You may sit." The lady took the form and spoke gently. As Adam nervously sat on the chair wondering just what this test would be about, the lady spoke in a pleasant manner. "B grade aptitude? That's splendid, Adam. Now let us proceed with the analytical test." The lady snapped her fingers and a beautiful geometrical pattern materialized in midair right in front of Adam. However, this pattern was incomplete. It was missing certain lines, angles, and shapes. "Finish the geometrical model." "How do I finish this?" Adam asked nervously. He was completely clueless. The lady smirked. "Well, that's what the test is about." "Wah!" Adam was in a daze. How was he supposed to finish something he didn't have the slightest knowledge about? Seeing the youth's expression, the woman was amused. "You have 2 minutes to finish this test. Your time starts now." Adam was brought back to his senses. "What? There's a time limit?" But the lady didn't reply. She simply stared at him with a smile. Seeing that the lady didn't have any intentions whatsoever to help, Adam could only grit his teeth and focus all his attention on the shining geometrical model hovering in front of him. He intently stared at the completed patterns as well as the parts that were missing, trying to figure out what exactly to do. He observed the lines and angles for a good half a minute until finally he had a flash of inspiration. It seems like the shapes and lines mirror each other at various intervals. Wait, that's not right. Adam's mind worked at lightning speed. The effects of absorbing souls during the past couple of months were beginning to show. His thought process was extremely fluid and fast. His eyes darted from one point to the other continuously as he mumbled, "The top left quadrant mirrors the bottom left. Parallel lines mirror each other. I see. This is a 3-dimensional figure." The lady sitting across from him was moved. Adam stretched his hand and pressed one point on the model. He then drew a line and connected it to another point right across from it. A new line was magically formed mid-air following Adam's actions. Soon, a minute had passed. Adam continued to connect dot after, creating lines and patterns, inclining one line to the other and forming an angle at their intersection. His speed initially was slow, but slowly he began to connect everything very quickly, almost as if on instinct. He moved both his hands in a mesmerizing manner, as if he were a masterclass artist in the process of finishing a beautiful painting. With only a few seconds short of the 2-minute timer, Adam finally connected the last pattern and completed the model. As soon as the geometrical model was complete, it gave off a bright radiance and then dispersed into tiny motes of light. Finally done, Adam breathed out in relief. He then looked at the lady across from him, whose mouth was agape, as if she couldn't believe what had just transpired. "Is everything all right?" He got slightly nervous seeing such a reaction from the lady and was wondering if he had done something that he wasn't supposed to. "Why, yes, everything's all right." The lady composed herself and looked at Adam. "Excellent job. You may proceed to the next test through the back exit." "All right, thank you." Adam stood up and exited the tent. The burgundy-haired lady looked at Adam's departing back and thought in astonishment, "What monstrous analytical skills." That geometrical pattern from earlier was actually an incomplete spell model for a rank 1 spell. Generally, without proper knowledge, it would have been nigh impossible for a layman to complete the pattern. The academy required the student to only complete 25% of the model to pass the test. This test not only tested one's analytical skills, but also comprehension ability. In the long history of the Clover Academy, only a handful of students had been able to complete the second test of the entrance examination. and all of them grew up to be powerful Magi. To be able to complete such a test meant that the person would have much less difficulty analyzing, comprehending, and memorizing spell models as they progressed further. After all, spell models became exponentially harder to analyze the further a Magus advanced. I must immediately inform the higher-ups. Special attention needs to be given to this boy. The lady took out a palm-sized circular disc from within her cloak, injected mana into it, and relayed the information. Unknowingly, Adam had already kicked up a storm before even entering the academy. After exiting the tent, Adam found himself on a large square. The streets were paved with white bricks, and lampposts were placed on the sidewalk at fixed intervals. And in front of him was a grand three-story building. At the center of the crossroad, there was a large and spectacular fountain. Many children were sitting around the fountain. Some sat on the grass on both sides of the streets. All these children had passed the first two tests and were in a very happy mood. Adam found a tree nearby and walked toward it. He sat under its shade, plucked a blade of grass, and began chewing on it. He closed his eyes and began wondering. According to Magus Alex, the final test is going to be a combat test. I wonder who my opponent will be. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out to him. Adam. Adam opened his eyes slightly and saw Edward running toward him with a jolly expression. Edward, you made it. Adam greeted him with a hearty laugh. Edward sat down under the tree beside Adam, panting slightly. He then looked at Adam and started laughing loudly. Of course I made it. What was your aptitude? B grade, Adam replied. Oh, me too. Edward laughed. By the way, Edward, is B grade very common? Yes and no, Edward replied. In general, B grades are very rare, especially A grade. They are heavily nurtured and taken care of by any major organization. But here in Clover Academy, B-grade students can be considered common because the academy only handpicks the best of the best. I see. Adam nodded in understanding. He wondered if his current aptitude was a result of the white lotus constant nourishment and whether his aptitude could increase in the future. However, he couldn't confirm his speculation. Thinking of this, he asked, can a person's aptitude increase? Edward slapped his thigh exaggeratedly. Although analytical and combat skills can be improved and sharpened over time, aptitude cannot. This is something a person is born with. As I thought, Adam nodded. Suddenly, the doors to the large building in front of the fountain opened, and a dozen Magi wearing dark green cloaks stepped out. Their aura and demeanor demanded nothing but admiration and respect. They walked down the marble stairs and finally stopped in front of the hundreds of students. More than 700 students had started initially, but now only about 350 remained. An old woman wearing a dark blue robe and a pointy hat of the same color came forth and spoke to everyone present. I am the headmistress of the Clover Academy. You all may address me as Professor Godfrey. The children present at the square were stunned. They hadn't expected the headmistress to appear all of a sudden. Professor Godfrey continued speaking with a gentle smile. Although the entrance examination consists of 3 tests, only the first 2 are required for your admission into the academy. The final test is only used for the first-year rankings. The children were confused. However, some of them could understand what the headmistress had just conveyed, and they couldn't help but be exhilarated. Seeing the puzzled expressions of most of the students present, Professor Godfrey chuckled. That means all of you have passed the academy's entrance examination. Welcome to Clover Academy. The children burst in loud cheers. All of them were incomparably excited. After all, Clover Academy was the best institute for learning magic in the entirety of the southern part of the continent. In this part of the continent, every kid who aspired to be a Magus would dream of one day attending the prestigious Clover Academy. That dream had finally come true for all the children present at the square today. Adam was no different. The moment he learned that he had been admitted to the academy, he raised his hands and jumped in joy. He even gave Edward a tight hug and began jumping around in sheer excitement. Professor Godfrey loved seeing this scene every year when she welcomed students into the academy. Their childlike curiosity and the way they yearned to learn magic made her very gratified. She looked at all the students present at the square. Her gaze then landed on a girl who had blonde hair and green eyes and was wearing round black-rimmed glasses. The girl, unlike the other kids, was standing in a cold manner, as if it was a given that she'd be accepted into the academy. Professor Godfrey's gaze then shifted to a blonde youth with blue eyes who was standing with his arms crossed and had an extremely smug look on his face. This boy was none other than Jeffrey. So these two have A-grade aptitudes, she thought inwardly. Finally, her gaze landed on Adam, who was hugging a fatty and jumping around like a monkey. Seeing his actions, Professor Godfrey couldn't help but chuckle. And this is the prodigy with the monstrous comprehension ability. No wonder Berger has taken an interest in him. She let all the children enjoy this special moment, and only after everyone had calmed down did she start speaking again. Everyone follow me into the auditorium inside the main building. There you will participate in the combat assessment. This will determine your rankings for the first year. Additionally, the students who come in the first, second, and third place will receive exceptional rewards. Please keep in mind that these rewards are very precious and rare. Therefore, I want all of you to try your best. The children then followed behind the dozen Magi who were in fact professors. They entered the main building in an orderly fashion and soon arrived at the auditorium. Just like everything else on campus, the auditorium was also humongous in size. On the far end of the auditorium was an elevated stage. The rest of the auditorium consisted of around 120 octagonal sitting mats that hovered a few inches above the wooden floors. All the professors, including the headmistress, got onto the stage and then looked at all the students present. Professor Godfrey solemnly said, "These mats that you see in front of you have all been inscribed with an illusion formation. Once you sit on it, your mind will enter a simulation where you will fight. This is how the combat assessment will be carried out." The children exclaimed in surprise. Without a doubt, most of them, if not all of them, had thought that they'd have to physically duke it out with other people for the combat test. But who would have thought that they'd be fighting inside an illusion? Now, all of you may wonder, Professor Godfrey began, why must Magi engage in direct combat when we can simply cast spells from afar? Well, let me tell you, that is simply flawed thinking. Professor Godfrey's tone became more solemn, and her voice turned up a notch. There will be times when your spellcasting will be interrupted by your enemies, or something else might happen that could prevent you from using mana. What are you going to do then? A Magus should always be prepared for everything. To embark on the path of a Magus means to fight against the natural order of the world. It is true that as Magi we are scholars, but we are also brave warriors. To become a Magus means to pursue the truth and also to fight against all odds and firmly stand tall in the face of adversity. We are arcane scholars. We are warriors. We are Magi, and this is our path of magic. Oh! All the children raised their fists and screamed in unison. A raging fire had been lit up in the depths of their hearts. The headmistress' words thoroughly resonated with every student present. Adam clenched his fists tightly as his eyes shone with newfound determination. The words of the headmistress kept repeating inside his mind. We are scholars. We are warriors. We are Magi. A new group of Magi appeared inside the auditorium. They were wearing olive-colored cloaks. These Magi were students. More precisely, they were final-year students. They were here to help accommodate the new students inside the illusion formation. One of these students, a beautiful young lady with black hair and blue eyes, suddenly walked up to Edward and warmly hugged him from behind. Edward was clearly startled, but when he turned his head and saw who it was, he blew a breath of relief and then grumbled. "Do not scare me like that." He then softly added, "Also, don't hug me in public. It's weird." The girl smiled warmly and then pulled Edward's chubby cheeks. "Congratulations, Edward dearest. I am very proud of you." Hearing sincere praises, Edward smugly laughed while repeatedly nodding. "Hee, thank you, thank you." The young lady looked at Adam and then asked Edward, "Did you make a new friend?" Edward nodded. "Yes, this is my friend, Adam. He also has a B-grade aptitude, just like me." "Hello, Adam." The young lady stretched her fair arm. "I'm Elaine, Edward's elder sister." Adam was completely mesmerized by her. He had never seen such a beautiful girl before. Hence, he was slightly blushing when he shook Elaine's hand. Hello, Adam. I am Elaine. Shit. Adam instantly regretted the words that came out of his mouth, and his face turned redder than a tomato. Elaine covered her mouth and began giggling. You're adorable. She then bade the two farewell and began assisting her classmates. While the first batch of new students were taking their seats on the illusion formation, Adam asked Edward with great doubt, Edward, you sure you're not adopted? Huh? Edward squinted his eyes. Why would you say that? Well, your sister is so charming and pretty. Adam then carefully thought of the right words to say, but couldn't. So he just decided to be direct. While you're just round and ugly. Humph. Edward snorted so hard his chubby cheeks were jiggling. I'm just waiting for my growth spurt. Just you wait. Just as the two friends were bantering with each other, a third of the new students had already hopped onto the illusion formation. And within a minute, half of these students were ejected from the formation. Clearly, they had already been defeated inside the illusion. All of them had terrified looks on their faces, and some had even passed out from excessive fear. However, something very interesting was happening currently inside the formation. One of the students, the girl who had an A-grade aptitude, was doing something extraordinary. Even the professors were astonished. This child has excellent fighting skills. I agree. Although she's young, she's very learned in the art of combat. Indeed, a good seedling. The professors standing around the headmistress were full of praise. It was very rare for a student to be gifted in learning magic as well as fighting. The latter was usually only cultivated over time. It had to be known that all the new students present were only 15 years of age. None of the other students could see what was happening within the illusion formation, but how could these professors, who were mighty Magi, not know? They could clearly see the progress of every student inside the formation. Even the headmistress, Professor Godfrey, nodded her head in approval seeing the blonde girl's fighting abilities. Tell me this child's background again, stated the headmistress. A man standing beside her respectfully complied. Yes, Professor. This girl's name is Lisa DeClaire. Aptitude, A grade. Comprehension, B grade. She comes from the Faber province. Professor Godfrey muttered in realization. Faber province. So she's from the DeClaire Magus family. That is correct, Professor. The man nodded. The DeClaire family head was killed in a dispute with another Magus family, the Gracie family. A few years back, Professor Godfrey thought inwardly as she saw Lisa battle a group of beasts inside the illusion formation. On the brink of ruin, the DeClaire family produced such a genius. If I'm not wrong, Lisa should be the late family head's daughter. A few minutes later, the beasts inside the formation finally overwhelmed Lisa, and she was ejected. She opened her eyes and calmly stepped off the mat. Whoa, she was able to stay inside for so long. 5 minutes. That should be some record, right? She's definitely the best fighter among us. The new students spoke in awe as they saw Lisa stand in a corner of the auditorium. Even the final year students were impressed by her fighting skills. After all, lasting 5 minutes against a group of wild beasts was an impressive feat. One had to know that such fights usually lasted a minute or so, especially when one was outnumbered. Tisk so snobbish. Edward muttered as he stared at the cold and aloof Lisa. Adam nodded. The first batch of students that went inside the illusion already produced a solid fighter, such as Lisa. He wondered how the students in the second batch would fare. He saw Jeffrey amongst the second batch of students sitting on the mat, and his expression instantly turned cold. Edward noticed this and asked curiously, What is it, Adam? You look mad. It's nothing, Adam said in an icy tone. I just caught sight of a hateful scumbag. Edward was surprised by Adam's sudden change in demeanor. He looked in the direction Adam was looking at and saw a blonde youth smugly sitting on the mat. Edward figured the two might have some enmity and couldn't help but be curious. Adam changed the subject and asked something that had been on his mind since he entered the academy. By the way, why don't I see any elves or dwarves or any other races at the academy? Oh, that's because foundational mana training for each race is different because of our differing anatomies. The elves have their own schools, and so do the dwarves and gnomes. Clover Academy is strictly for humans, Edward replied. I see. Adam nodded in understanding. Soon, the second batch of students entered the illusion formation, and within the first 10 seconds, many were starting to get ejected. Adam had his eyes on Jeffrey, but was surprised to find that he was ejected only a few seconds after the 1-minute timer. Adam was momentarily stunned, but then burst into laughter. What did I even expect from this rat? Ha ha ha. Even back when they were in the traveling party, Jeffrey had never displayed any noticeable fighting skills. Whenever he came to look for trouble with Adam, he would always gang up on him and was, in fact, very cowardly by nature. You must really dislike this guy, huh? Edward asked as he saw Jeffrey step off the mat and walk away in embarrassment. Dislike? Adam snorted. I hate him. Anyway, I'll tell you about our history later. For now, let's get ready for the combat test. It'll be our turn next. And soon the second batch of students had also finished. The one who lasted the longest was a burly youth with short black hair. Although his figure was very imposing, his facial expression was kind and amiable. The boy was able to persist for 4.5 minutes and was currently in the second position. This spoke volumes about his fighting abilities. Adam took a mental note of him, as well as the blonde girl, Lisa. And finally, the last batch of new students sat on the hovering mats one by one. Adam and Edward sat beside each other. Edward was slightly nervous, whereas Adam had a determined expression and encouraged himself to beat Lisa's record. A final year student approached them and began explaining, when the illusion formation activates, you will find yourself inside a simulation where you will have to fight against wild beasts. The more beasts you kill and the longer you last inside, the greater your ranking will be. Furthermore, the beasts you'll be facing inside will all be normal wild beasts and not magical beasts. And last but not least, the moment before you are killed inside the simulation, you will be ejected. This will ensure that you do not suffer any severe psychological injuries. Any questions? Adam was quite surprised by the workings of the formation. He asked, You mean to say that no matter what I won't die inside? Correct. The student nodded. However, the pain you feel from any sustained injuries will be very much real. Understood. Adam replied in excitement. If it was true that he would not die inside, then he could go all out. After all the students had taken their seats on the mats, the formation inscribed on them lit up, and all the kids' consciousness was transported inside the simulation. Adam opened his eyes and found himself standing on a vast plain. He looked around in amazement and exclaimed, It feels so real. He checked himself out and found that his body was exactly like it was in the real world. Is this really an illusion? He was completely stunned. But more than that, his fascination with illusion magic increased greatly. Please choose your weapon. Suddenly, a mechanical voice echoed in his surroundings. The next moment, dozens of weapons appeared out of nowhere and levitated in front of him. Adam was taken aback at this sudden change. There were all sorts of weapons such as spears, glaives, staffs, swords, scimitars, shields, gauntlets, hammers, axes, etc. Without hesitation, he chose the sword. Although he was not at all proficient with this weapon, it was still the weapon he was most familiar with. As he grabbed the hilt of the long sword, all the other weapons disappeared. Following that, 6 hyenas appeared in the distance, growling at him menacingly. They were inching closer slowly, trying to surround him. But before the hyenas could make another move, Adam had already dashed in their direction. He recklessly charged amidst the pack of hyenas, all the while laughing savagely. Ha ha! Kill! 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 It had to be said that the simulation was very lifelike. When Adam charged at the pack of hyenas, these animals first displayed a shocked expression followed by primal ferocity. Adam was stunned momentarily before grinning from ear to ear. Good. This is how it should be. He jumped and raised his long sword. Before he had even landed on the ground, he swung the sword down viciously and cut a hyena in two. And as soon as he landed amidst the pack, he began his wanton slaughter. Although his swordplay was very amateurish and full of faults, that didn't stop Adam from cutting down the beasts. His body moved by instinct as he swiftly dodged the beast's attacks, and when the time was right, he would go for the kill. One by one, the beasts kept dying and then dissipating into phantoms. In their place, more beasts materialized and began attacking him. Thanks to his strength and perception, Adam was completely in the zone as he kept dodging and attacking repeatedly. All the while, the grin on his face never faded. The boy was slowly beginning to realize just how much he loved fighting. Outside the simulation, the Magi present on the stage all had mixed reactions. This child's so barbaric. I agree. He fights like those mercenaries in the secular world. No class at all. So what? The kid's an unpolished gem. With proper guidance, he will become a splendid Magus. From what I can see, the kid is simply fighting on instinct. Imagine his fighting abilities when he learns a magic combat technique. Time continued to tick, and the 4-minute timer was soon up. Inside the simulation, Adam was already bathed in blood. But despite that, he continued to hack down his sword and kill the beasts that were popping up one by one. For the first 3 minutes, he was unscathed. But after he was grievously injured by a hyena, the blood loss affected his performance. And after that, the wounds kept on accumulating. For every beast Adam killed, he'd receive numerous wounds in return. Although the pain was unbearable, he knew he wouldn't die. So he simply gritted his teeth and continued to slaughter away. And soon, the 4-minute and 30-second timer was up. Adam was now officially second place in the ranking. Seeing the time on the clock, the burly youth who was previously in second position, and now third, could only shake his head with a wry smile. Lisa, the girl in the first place, was intently looking at Adam, who was sitting on the mat with his eyes closed. Adam's eyebrows were furrowed, and he was sweating profusely, yet he wasn't ejected from the illusion. As time continued to tick away, and Adam got closer to the 5-minute mark, Lisa's eyes narrowed, and she couldn't help but wonder, this guy, is he going to break my record? Involuntarily, her palms had clenched tightly into fists. Inside the illusion, a hyena ferociously bit on Adam's shoulder, causing him to scream in agony. He raised his arm and hit the hyena's head with the sword pommel. Following that, he stabbed the sword into the beast's neck. He didn't have a moment of respite as 2 more hyenas launched their attacks, sandwiching him in the middle. Adam hurriedly retreated while vertically swinging his sword at one of the beasts. Although he had managed to kill this hyena, the other hyena took advantage of this and pounced on him. At the last moment, Adam turned his body just enough for the hyena to bite his arm instead of his neck. He then grabbed the hyena by the head and viciously pummeled it to the ground. Then, he raised his foot and stepped on the beast's torso. Before the beast could retaliate, Adam had already stabbed the sword through its skull. At this point, he had nearly lost all energy. He was only managing to stand on his feet with the support of his sword. Panting heavily, he looked around and saw that he was now surrounded by dozens of hyenas. Adam took a deep breath and then laughed boisterously. Ha ha! Let's see where my limit lies. He roared at the top of his lungs, picked a random direction, and charged at the beasts. Kill! Heavens, look at the clock. 5 minutes are up. No way. Who's this guy? He really beat the record. Now he's rank 1. What's his name? He's so fierce. Is he really 15 years old? All the children looked at Adam, who was sitting on the mat with his eyes tightly shut. His clothes were drenched in sweat, and his body convulsed from time to time. At the moment, he was the only student sitting on the mat. Everyone else had already been ejected. Jeffrey and his small group, who were the victims of Adam's extortion, all had ugly faces right now. This lowly peasant. Jeffrey gnashed his teeth in rage. He had an A-grade aptitude. Despite that, he was still outshined by Adam. Edward was pleasantly surprised as he stared at Adam, who was continuing to persist. This guy's so good at fighting. He nice. Lisa, on the other hand, was extremely angry and disappointed. Angry that her fighting skills were inferior to Adam, and disappointed that she wouldn't get the first-place reward. Holy crap. 6 minutes are up. This guy is simply a monster, and he still hasn't been ejected. The students exclaimed loudly. They were in an uproar. All of them had been inside the simulation and knew exactly how the difficulty level would rise over time. That is why they were so shocked. On the stage, the professors were all more or less impressed by Adam's performance. But if there was one thing that they frowned up, that would be Adam's reckless demeanor. Such foolhardy behavior was truly unbecoming of a Magus. Of course, one could still argue that Adam knew this was an illusion and that he wouldn't die, and that's why he chose to display such an attitude. But still, a few Magi didn't approve of this. "It's time," Professor Godfrey muttered with a smile. Finally, just when the 7-minute timer was up, Adam's eyes snapped open. The first thing Adam did when he opened his eyes was to immediately touch his neck in panic. After confirming that his neck was still intact, he breathed a sigh of relief. Phew, that simulation felt too real. Before he was ejected, the hyenas had thoroughly surrounded him and pinned him to the ground. The last thing Adam saw was a ravenous hyena ruthlessly biting down on his throat. Adam wiped the sweat off of his face and slowly stood up. He looked around and saw that all the mats were empty. The hundreds of students were standing and silently looking at him like he was some sort of monster. Suddenly, Professor Godfrey's gentle voice broke the silence. "Congratulations, Adam. You were able to last 7 minutes and 18 seconds. You are now officially ranked first among the first-year students." There was a wide round of applause, not just from the students, but also from the professors. Even Lisa, aloof as she was, had to acknowledge Adam's fighting skills. She also clapped, albeit for only 2 seconds. The only people who weren't applauding were Jeffrey and his entourage. After the applause died down, Adam looked at the headmistress and replied respectfully, "Thank you, Professor. May I ask a question?" "Go ahead," replied Professor Godfrey with a smile. "In the history of the Academy's entrance examination, what's the longest a student has lasted inside the illusion formation?" Adam asked expectantly. 7 minutes and 45 seconds. Professor Godfrey stated, "You, Adam, are in third place if we are to consider the results of all the combat tests since the inception of the Academy." There was a collective gasp heard from all the students. They were stunned. To come in third place while taking into account all the combat assessments. What did that mean? It was simply shocking. One had to know that Clover Academy had been established in Moon City for hundreds of years. In fact, the Academy had been there even before the Nightingale Kingdom was founded. After the commotion had died down and Adam had stepped off the mat and taken his place among the new students, Professor Godfrey once again congratulated everyone. "Now that the rankings are out, you may all proceed to the dormitories. But before that, you must complete your registration at the Academy's administrative building. Your seniors will guide you through the process. Tomorrow will be orientation where senior students and some faculty members will introduce you to the various places in the Academy. And finally, 2 days later, your classes will officially begin. Study hard and train diligently. You are the future of Clover Academy." After another round of cheering, all the new students excitedly left the auditorium and followed the final year students into the administrative building. The registration didn't take much time. The students had to fill in some additional personal information and pay a fee of 10 platinum pieces for the first academic year. The Academy was very strict about the enrollment fee. They would not accept anything other than platinum coins. After all the paperwork was done, each student was handed a wooden trunk and then assigned to their dorm rooms. Within an hour, all the new students had reached their respective dormitories. The boys' residential building was on the east side of campus, and the girls' was on the west side. At the administrative building, Adam and Edward had already decided to become roommates. Each student was going to be assigned a random roommate anyway, so the two decided to stay together since they were already acquainted with each other. On the third floor of the boys' residential building, Adam and Edward stood in front of dorm 52A with excited looks. Adam placed the large trunk on the floor and then unlocked the door. The two entered the dorm and looked at the room's layout with bright eyes. Edward had grown up in opulence, so he wasn't impressed that much, but the same couldn't be said about Adam. "Whoa, this is where we're going to stay for the next year? Amazing," Adam marveled. The Academy's dorm was very spacious, to say the least. Upon entering the dorm, the two were greeted by a large living room. An exquisite crystal chandelier hung from the ceiling that illuminated every part of the dorm. The floor was carpeted with excellent quality rug. There was a set of couches and a small round table that was aesthetically pleasing to look at. To the left of the living room was the bathroom. It had a marble-tiled bathtub and a lavatory within a small cubicle. There was also a sink, full-length mirror, and shelves to keep towels and other toiletries. Twin bunk beds were situated on the right side of the living room. There were also 2 closets beside the bunk beds. And finally, directly across the living room was a small area that would serve as the study room. Not bad. Edward inspected the dorm and then lazily lay on the bed. I called dibs on the bottom bed. Adam rolled his eyes and thought inwardly, "You're too fat to climb to the top bed anyway." After keeping his belongings, Adam sat on the couch in the living room and finally had the chance to look at the contents of the wooden trunk. Edward also did the same. Upon opening the trunk, the first thing that came into view was the Academy's uniform, which was the olive-colored cloak that Adam had seen the senior students wearing. This was also the same cloak that Magus, Alex, and the others had been wearing. Seeing the 4-leaf clover insignia on the cloak, Adam got emotional. He put on the cloak and posed heroically. He continued laughing foolishly from time to time. After posing a bit more in his brand-new cloak, Adam sat back down and checked through the other contents of the trunk. There were 2 thick books. The first one was titled Introduction to Arcane Magic. The second book was titled Basics of Spellcasting. Apart from these 2 books, there was another book from which Adam could feel a mysterious aura. It was made of a black hardcover and had strange geometric patterns inscribed on top. "Edward, you know what this is?" he asked curiously. Edward, who was flipping through one of the books, looked over and replied, "Oh, that's a grimoire. It's made of special materials, making its pages practically endless. It's what Magi use to write down their spell models and other important notes." "Ah, I see." Adam nodded in understanding. He opened the grimoire. Its pages were blank. He played around with it for a few moments and then kept it aside. All that was left inside the trunk was a small leather box, a flask, and a scroll. Adam picked up the leather box and opened it. Inside it were 2 items kept on a fine silk cloth. One was a transparent crystal vial, and the other was a crystal ball. Seeing this, Adam's eyes lit up. This was his reward for coming in first place in the student rankings. According to one of the faculty members at the administrative building, the liquid inside the crystal vial was called Body Cleansing Essence Oil. This liquid effectively removed the impurities present inside one's body. At the same time, it also restructured the body, strengthening it immensely. It was an extremely rare medicine and very expensive, to say the least. The crystal ball, on the other hand, contained knowledge of the rank 1 spell, Eldritch Beam. This ranged spell had one of the most devastating attacks among rank 1 spells. Its market price was 15 platinum pieces. He carefully placed these 2 items back inside the leather box. Now, only 2 items remained, the flask and the scroll. Out of all the items inside the trunk, these 2 had the most value. Adam reached out to grab them with trembling hands, excitement and anticipation evident in his eyes. After all, these 2 items would directly help him become a Magus. Adam did not use these 2 items immediately. He only glanced at them and kept it back inside the trunk. He remembered one of the professors at the administrative building mentioned that these 2 items must be utilized with a calm state of mind. This was something that was of utmost importance to Adam, so he wasn't impatient about it at all. He decided to use these 2 items after orientation was over tomorrow. The following day, a handful of senior students and faculty members gave the new students a tour of the academy. The students were made aware of all the amenities available to them. It took almost the entire day for the students to be acquainted with everything. An hour before sunset, after all the students had gone back to their respective dorms, Adam decided that it was time. "Ed, let's go to meet up with your sister," he spoke excitedly. "All right, let's go." Edward nodded. The 2 of them grabbed their respective flasks and scrolls from the trunk, put them safely inside a satchel, and left their dorm room. Elaine had agreed to assist them with the whole process. Even though detailed instructions on how to advance to a Magus were stated in the scroll, she still insisted on helping Edward. She doted on him very much, after all, and since Adam was his roommate, she decided to help him as well. The two boys excitedly ran through the campus and made their way to Elm Grove, a small forest where students usually came for a stroll and to relax. After about 10 minutes, they reached a gazebo at a clearing inside the woods. Inside the gazebo, two young ladies wearing olive-colored cloaks were chatting with each other. Elaine, we're here, Edward shouted excitedly. Looking in the direction of two boys running toward them, Elaine smiled brightly. Eddie, come. We've been waiting for you. After the two roommates stepped inside the gazebo, Elaine introduced her friend to them. Eddie, Adam, this is my good friend Jenna. She then looked at Adam and smiled. And she'll be the one helping you with the advancement. Adam looked at Jenna and sincerely said, Thank you for agreeing to help me out, Miss Jenna. Jenna, who was initially disdainful toward Adam after seeing him wear commoner clothes, was now in a slightly better mood after seeing the youth's respectful behavior toward her. You should thank Elaine instead. It's only because she asked me to, she replied flatly. Adam looked at Elaine and spoke genuinely. Thank you, Miss Elaine. Elaine ruffled Adam's hair and spoke with a gentle smile. Anything for Eddie's friend. And you could just call me Elaine. Adam blushed slightly and lowered his head, avoiding eye contact with the beautiful girl. All right, let us get this over with. I still have to go back and study, Jenna muttered, slightly impatient. She walked to the center of the gazebo and then spoke. Adam, come sit in front of me. Yes. Adam had a solemn look on his face as he sat cross-legged at the center of the gazebo. First, unfurl the scroll and press it against the floor. She instructed. Adam did as he was told and opened the scroll. A mysterious aura emanated from the strange characters and symbols inscribed on it. Then he pressed the scroll against the floor. Following that, the mysterious symbols slithered out of the scroll and imprinted on the floor. And very soon, they formed a circular formation with Adam at the center. Furthermore, the scroll also transmitted secret knowledge directly to Adam's mind. Whoa! Adam looked at this process with his mouth agape. Focus, Adam, Jenna reprimanded. Now uncork the flask and drink the potion of hope. Why, yes. Adam came to his senses and then opened the ivory flask. Inside was a transparent green liquid that looked very unassuming. However, it was anything but unassuming, as it was the single most important thing required for a normal person to become a Magus. For as long as one can remember, from the dawn of magical civilization, humans have always consumed this magical potion to unlock the raw potential inside their mortal bodies. For hundreds of thousands of years, the recipe for this potion had been passed down for generations, and over time, it had been refined and improved repeatedly. This potion served only one function, and that was to allow a person to feel mana. And that is why this potion was named the Potion of Hope, for it gave a mortal hope to transcend boundaries and become a Magus. Adam had a solemn look on his face as he saw the transparent potion inside the flask. Without hesitating, he gulped the entire thing in one go. The moment the potion entered his mouth, it magically transformed into gas and spread through every fiber of his body and even his mind. Adam closed his eyes and involuntarily entered a trance-like state. He could feel a silent metamorphosis happening inside of him. He was completely lost in this feeling and didn't know how long had passed. But when he opened his eyes again, the world had completely changed. Although he couldn't physically see it, he could feel a mysterious element that seemed to be found in abundance in his surroundings. Only one word echoed in his mind: mana. Jenna's timely instruction entered Adam's ears. Now circulate the mana extraction technique. This is the final step. When Adam opened the scroll, an extremely valuable piece of information was also directly transferred to his brain. This was a technique that allowed him to gather mana from the air and store it inside his body. This was Clover Academy's very own secret manual, known as the Clover Mana Extraction Technique. Adam recalled the information he received from the scroll and immediately began practicing the technique. With the help of this technique, he began attracting the mana in the air. He imagined mana to be small fireflies that were slowly being absorbed into his flesh. The moment the mana entered his flesh, Adam's body trembled ever so slightly. He could feel the mana thoroughly washing his flesh and slowly burrowing deep inside. After about 10 minutes, Adam felt as if he was at his limit and finally stopped. He was now reborn. At that point, he knew deep in his heart that he had finally become a rank 1 Magus. Congratulations, Adam. Elaine and Edward were very happy for the youth. Even Jenna was nodding her head in approval. Adam smiled brightly and was about to reply when suddenly his smile froze. From the depths of his soul, he could feel a strong resonance, and he instantly knew what it was. The white lotus. Adam immediately sent his consciousness to his mind, and the scene that greeted him left him completely shocked. Earlier, when he used to send his consciousness inside his mind, he would always find himself directly inside the mysterious space of the white lotus. But now it was something entirely different. He found himself hovering above a water body, and in the center of the water body floated a pristine white lotus with 3 verdant round leaves around it. After coming into contact with mana, the white lotus seemed to have undergone a transformation. Adam was flabbergasted. He looked around and saw that the water body appeared to be boundless, almost as if it were a sea. Wait a minute. Adam's eyes widened in disbelief. A sea? Although the Academy's mana extraction manual only included knowledge relevant to a rank 1 Magus, Adam recalled some of the bits and pieces of information about subsequent ranks that he had absorbed from the memory of the powerhouse. A sea. A sea. The youth muttered incoherently, his face filled with shock. Impossible. Right at that moment, Adam's consciousness returned to the real world when Edward called out to him. Adam, you all right? Seeing the concerned look on his roommate's face, Adam nodded. Why, yeah, I'm okay. I was just overwhelmed by this new feeling. Okay, hurry up and move. I need to advance as well. Edward spoke excitedly. Adam got to his feet in a daze and stood at the side. Meanwhile, Elaine helped Edward through the ritual of becoming a Magus. Throughout the entire process, Adam remained absent-minded. He still couldn't come to terms with the unexpected gains brought to him by the White Lotus. This should have only happened when I advanced to rank 2. But the fact that it happened now, it has to be because of the Lotus. Adam thought incredulously. The Magus soul that he absorbed inside the White Lotus not only contained vast knowledge and experience about herbalism, but it also contained some information about Magus ranks. However, this information was not comprehensive because of the memory's fragmented nature. Congratulations, Eddie. Elaine's cheerful voice brought Adam out of his deep thoughts. Adam decided to throw the matter of this sudden development to the back of his mind for the time being. He walked up to Edward and gave him a hug. Nicely done, Ed. Edward hugged him back and laughed loudly. Ha ha ha. Adam, we're finally Magi. This calls for a celebration. He came closer and then whispered in his ears, I have some fine quality wine back in our dorm room. Let's finish that bottle tonight. Adam definitely wouldn't say no to wine. He had developed quite a liking for it back when he tasted it for the first time with the mercenaries from the traveling party. Besides, he needed to calm the turbulent emotions in his heart. To celebrate the joyous occasion, that night the two of them got viciously drunk in their dorm room. Damn it, Adam cursed under his breath as he sprinted through the Academy's main building's corridor. He screamed without turning back. Run, fatty, run. Wait, haha. Edward struggled to speak as he ran after Adam. Wait for me. The two friends had drunk like madmen last night. As a result, they were severely hungover and were already late for class. Being late on the very first day of school was really messed up. After a series of twists and turns, the duo finally managed to locate their classroom. Both of them showed up in a haggard state, to say the least. Especially Edward. He seemed like he was on his last breath. The professor, a middle-aged man with fiery red hair, was interrupted by the two's sudden arrival. He looked at them and frowned. It's the first day of school, and you're already late. By 30 minutes. Why the hell did you two even show up? Judging from the tone of the professor, he seemed really angry. Forgive us, Professor. Adam tried to cook up an excuse, but was brutally cut off by the professor. Silence. The professor roared. I don't want to hear excuses. You two are to remain standing while holding your ears for the rest of the class. Why, yes, Professor. Adam and Edward could only helplessly nod. They stood by the door while holding their ears. This elicited a round of hushed laughter from the rest of the students in class. However, the professor didn't reprimand the class. After all, the whole point of the punishment was to make the two latecomers stand in embarrassment. As I was saying, the professor continued his lecture. Rank 1 is also known as Mana Foundation. This rank consists of 5 minor stages that a Magus must advance through to be promoted to the next rank. The first minor stage is the Flesh stage. Here, the Magus absorbs the mana in the air and thoroughly washes their flesh. Only when every inch of the flesh has been nourished by mana can the Magus advance to the next stage, called the Muscle stage. Seeing that all the students were paying attention and taking notes, the professor nodded and continued explaining. The same happens in the second stage. Mana thoroughly nourishes all the muscles and tendons in the body until it seeps further in, at which point the Magus advances to the Bone stage where the cycle repeats itself. After the Bone stage comes the Organ stage and finally the Neural stage. In the fifth and final stage, mana nourishes the brain and the nervous system. This results in the creation of mana channels that flow through the body. A student raised his hand and asked, "Professor, if in the fifth stage mana directly nourishes our brain, doesn't that mean it is highly risky and very dangerous?" The professor nodded in approval. Precisely. The fifth stage is the most dangerous and the first major hurdle that a Magus faces. If something were to go wrong during this stage, then the Magus would become a vegetable with no hope of recovery. All the students gasped in apprehension. The professor, however, comforted everyone with his next words. That is why it is so important to receive proper guidance when on the path of a Magus. And you all, as students of Clover Academy, will naturally be taken care of. Always remember, kids, we can look far only because we're standing on the shoulders of giants. For the rest of the class, the professor taught other basic points that a Rank 1 Magus needed to take note of. However, no information was disclosed regarding Rank 2. After all, that was highly confidential knowledge. But Adam knew exactly what happened after a Magus reached the Neural stage. In order to advance to Rank 2, 2 prerequisites must be fulfilled. Firstly, the Magus needs to guide the mana through the mana channels and condense it at the center of their body. The second prerequisite is the formation of the Spirit Sea, which only happens after the brain has been nourished and enhanced by mana. But thanks to the White Lotus, Adam had already achieved the unprecedented feat of forming the Spirit Sea as a mere Rank 1 Magus.